Welcome back to Lore 2 RPG, where we dive deep into gaming's greatest stories. Today, we journey into the mysterious realm of Elden Ring's outer gods to explore these enigmatic entities that shape reality itself from beyond the veil of comprehension. Over the next couple hours, we'll uncover the true nature of these cosmic forces, their influences on the lands between, and the profound impact they've had on every soul who has ever walked beneath the Erd Tree's golden light. So, settle in, get comfortable, and let's begin this epic adventure together into the deepest mysteries of the From Software universe. Introduction to the Outer Gods. In the sprawling tapestry of Elden Ring's lore, few concepts are as simultaneously fascinating and terrifying as the Outer Gods. These beings exist beyond the physical realm of the lands between, wielding power that transcends mortal understanding. They are not mere characters in our story, but rather the puppet masters pulling the strings from dimensions beyond our perception, shaping reality according to their inscrutable designs. The very name Outer Gods speaks to their nature. They are outer, existing beyond the boundaries of the world we know, beyond the reach of conventional understanding. They are gods, possessing power that dwarfs even the mightiest demigods and empyreans. Yet they are not gods, in the traditional sense that we might imagine divine beings caring for their followers with benevolence. No, these entities are alien, incomprehensible, operating according to logic that mortal minds struggle to grasp. What makes the Outer Gods particularly fascinating is their indirect method of influence. Unlike the demigods who can stride across battlefields and clash sword against sword, the Outer Gods cannot manifest directly in the physical world. They must work through proxies, through chosen vessels, through corruption and influence that seeps into reality like water through cracks in a foundation. Each Outer God represents not just a source of power, but an entirely different way of viewing existence itself. They offer competing visions of what reality should be, what life should become, what death should mean. Some seek order, others chaos. Some promise transformation, others preservation. Some offer transcendence, others annihilation. And in their cosmic struggle for dominance, the lands between have become a battleground where their influences clash and merge in ways both beautiful and horrifying. The history of the lands between can be understood as a succession of ages, each dominated by different outer gods or their representatives. Before the Erd Tree, before Queen Merica, before the Golden Order, other powers held sway. The ancient dragons served mysterious deities. The fire giants worshipped their fell god. Deathbirds carried out the will of entities associated with ghost flame and the natural cycle of death and rebirth. Understanding the Outer Gods is crucial to understanding Elden Ring's deepest themes. This is not simply a story about political intrigue among demigods fighting over inheritance. It is a cosmic horror story about incomprehensible forces using mortals as pawns in games beyond mortal understanding. It is about the price of power, the corruption that comes with divine influence, and the terrible beauty that emerges when cosmic forces attempt to remake reality in their own image. The Greater Will, architect of order. Let us begin our exploration with the most prominent and influential of all the Outer Gods, the Greater Will. This entity stands apart from the others, not just in its current dominance, but in the fundamental nature of what it represents. Where other Outer Gods might be seen as forces of nature or cosmic principles, the Greater Will appears to be something more like a supreme creative force, a cosmic architect with the power to fracture reality itself and remake it according to its vision. The Greater Will's story begins before the beginning, in a time when existence itself was different. According to the cryptic words of Hyeta, who speaks with the voice of the frenzied flame, all that there is came from the One Great. This suggests that before the current reality, there existed some primordial unity, some original state of being that encompassed everything. The greater will, in an act of cosmic violence that defies comprehension, fractured this one great, creating the multiplicity of existence we now know. This act of cosmic creation through destruction tells us something fundamental about the greater will's nature. It is a force that creates through division, that brings order through the imposition of boundaries and separations. Where once there was unity, the greater will created distinction. Where once there was wholeness, it created fragments that could be arranged, organized, controlled. The greater will's method of influence over the lands between is more sophisticated than that of other outer gods. Rather than relying solely on corruption or gradual influence, it dispatched a living embodiment of its power in the form of the Elden beast. This golden star fell from the heavens in ages past, carrying within it the cosmic force that would become the Elden ring itself. The Elden beast is not merely a vassal or servant of the greater will. It is the greater will's power made manifest, a living representation of cosmic order. The choice of form for the Elden beast is telling. In many ways, it resembles a great dragon, echoing the ancient dragons that once ruled the lands between. This may not be coincidence. The greater will's power seems to work by building upon existing structures, by co-opting and transforming what came before, rather than simply destroying and replacing. The dragon-like form of the Elden beast may have been chosen to make the new order more acceptable to the ancient powers that already existed. But the greater will's influence extends far beyond the Elden beast. It established an entire infrastructure of divine communication through Meteor, Mother of Fingers, and her children, the Two Fingers. These beings serve as intermediaries, able to communicate the greater will's desires to mortals and to identify suitable candidates for divine elevation. The Two Fingers possess the crucial ability to recognize and select Empyreans, those rare individuals capable of becoming vessels for divine power. The relationship between the greater will and Queen Marika reveals much about how this outer god operates. Marika was chosen as an Empyrean, elevated to godhood, and made the vessel for the Elden ring. But this was not a simple matter of divine favor. The greater will bound Marika to its will, making her both immensely powerful and utterly constrained. She became the living embodiment of the Golden Order, but at the cost of her freedom to act against the greater will's design. Through Marika, the greater will imposed its vision of perfect order upon the lands between. This order was characterized by rigid hierarchy, clear distinctions between the worthy and unworthy, and the suppression of anything that threatened the established system. The Golden Order became a religious and political system that justified the greater will's rule while systematically eliminating alternative sources of power and alternative ways of understanding existence. The greater will's order is fundamentally about control. It seeks to create a reality where everything has its proper place, where change occurs only according to divine will, where the natural chaos of existence is held in check by imposed structure. This is why aspects of the primordial crucible were suppressed, not because they were inherently evil, but because they represented a more chaotic, more natural way of being that threatened the artificial order the greater will sought to maintain. Yet for all its power, the greater will is not omnipotent. The shattering of the Elden ring represents a moment when its control faltered, when the very vessel it had chosen to embody its will rebelled against the constraints placed upon her. Marika's act of shattering the Elden ring was perhaps the only form of rebellion available to her, to break the very symbol and source of the order she was forced to maintain. In response to this crisis, the greater will appears to have withdrawn much of its direct influence. The guidance of grace that once clearly showed the path forward became intermittent, uncertain. The Two Fingers lost their ability to communicate clearly with their cosmic patron. In desperation, the The greater will recalled the tarnished, those who had been previously exiled from its grace, hoping that these outcasts might succeed where its chosen champions had failed. This withdrawal reveals something important about the greater will's limitations. For all its cosmic power, it requires willing vessels to enact its will in the physical world. It cannot simply impose its order through divine fiat. It must work through mortal agents who can choose to obey or rebel. This dependency creates vulnerabilities that other outer gods have been quick to exploit. The greater will's influence on the world extends beyond politics and religion into the very fabric of reality itself. The golden color that suffuses so much of the lands between is more than mere aesthetic choice. It represents the greater will's power made visible. The golden light of grace, the golden glow of the Erd tree, the golden threads that connect sites of grace across the landscape. All of these are manifestations of the greater will's presence in the world. But perhaps most significantly, the greater will represents a particular approach to the fundamental problems of existence. Where other outer gods might embrace change, decay, chaos, or transformation, the greater will seeks to freeze reality in a perfect, eternal form. It envisions a cosmos where suffering ends not through transcendence or acceptance, but through the imposition of a perfect order where suffering becomes impossible because everything exists in its proper, ordained place. This vision has a terrible beauty to it, but also a terrible cost. The greater will's order requires the suppression of natural processes, the denial of change and growth, the elimination of anything that cannot be controlled or categorized. In seeking to create a perfect world, it risks creating a dead world, a cosmos so rigidly ordered that it loses the vitality that makes existence meaningful. As we delve deeper into the lore of other outer gods, we will see how each offers a different answer to the problems the greater will seeks to solve. But the greater will's influence looms over all of these alternatives, the dominant force that other powers must either accommodate or actively resist. The frenzied flame, chaos incarnate. Standing in direct opposition to the greater will's vision of perfect order is perhaps the most terrifying of all the outer gods. The entity behind the frenzied flame. Where the greater will seeks to create structure, boundaries, and hierarchy, the frenzied flame desires nothing less than the complete annihilation of all distinctions, the melting away of everything that the greater will has created, and the return to a primordial state of undifferentiated unity. The very existence of the frenzied flame seems to be a cosmic response to the greater will's act of fracturing the one great. If the greater will represents the principle of division and distinction, then the frenzied flame represents the opposite principle. The drive toward unity through destruction, the desire to undo the cosmic violence that created multiplicity and return to the original state of oneness. This opposition is symbolized in the most direct possible way through the relationship between the two fingers and the three fingers. The greater will communicates through the two fingers, while the frenzied flame speaks through the three fingers. Together, they would form a complete hand of 5 fingers, suggesting that these two cosmic forces may once have been unified aspects of a single entity. The theory that the greater will and the frenzied flame were once one being, split apart in some primordial cosmic trauma, helps explain both their fundamental opposition and their strange symmetries. The 3 fingers exist in a state that perfectly embodies the nature of their cosmic patron. Unlike the pristine golden 2 fingers that serve the greater will, the 3 fingers are burned, smouldering, tortured entities dwelling in the deepest sewers beneath the capital. They are imprisoned, hidden away from the light of order, dwelling in filth and darkness. This is not mere symbolic staging. It reflects the fundamental relationship between order and chaos, between the recognized and the suppressed, between what is admitted into the light and what is forced into the shadows. The origin story of the frenzied flame, as it can be pieced together from fragments of lore, is a tale of cosmic injustice and the birth of something terrible from unbearable suffering. Long ago, there existed a great caravan of merchants, nomadic people who traveled the trade routes of the world. These merchants were accused of heretical beliefs by the authorities of their time. Rather than face persecution openly, the entire caravan was rounded up and buried alive beneath the capital. In those depths, facing slow death by suffocation and starvation, surrounded by the corpses of their loved ones, the surviving merchants did what desperate people have always done when faced with absolute injustice. They cursed their oppressors and called upon powers beyond mortal understanding to grant them vengeance. Their suffering, their despair, their rage became a beacon that attracted the attention of the frenzied flame. In response to their cries for revenge, the frenzied flame answered, transforming their anguish into a cosmic force of destruction. This origin story reveals something crucial about the frenzied flame's nature. Unlike other outer gods, who might be seen as natural forces or cosmic principles, the frenzied flame appears to be directly responsive to suffering and injustice. It is drawn to those who have been abandoned, persecuted, driven to despair by the very order that the greater will seeks to maintain. In this sense, the frenzied flame can be understood as a cosmic antibody, a response to the pathologies that develop when order becomes too rigid, too cruel, too indifferent to suffering. The madness associated with the frenzied flame is not random insanity, but a very specific form of consciousness that emerges when the boundaries between self and other begin to break down. Those touched by the frenzied flame begin to see through the illusions of separation that normally structure perception. They recognize that the distinctions between individual and cosmos, between self and other, between order and chaos, are artificial constructs imposed by the greater will. This recognition brings with it a terrible clarity. To see through the illusion of separation is to understand that all suffering is one suffering, that all consciousness is one consciousness temporarily divided against itself. The appropriate response to this recognition, from the perspective of the frenzied flame, is not to seek to heal the divisions, but to annihilate them entirely. If separation is the source of suffering, then the elimination of separation through universal destruction becomes a form of cosmic mercy. The yellow flame that characterizes the frenzied flame's power is described as emerging from the eyes of its followers, eventually replacing their eyes entirely. This image is deeply symbolic. The flame burns away ordinary vision, the vision that sees division and distinction, and replaces it with a different kind of sight that perceives only unity. The madness that accompanies this transformation is the mind's attempt to process a form of consciousness that mortal cognition was never designed to handle. Shabriri, the figure most closely associated with spreading the frenzied flame's influence, embodies this cosmic mission of dissolution. Originally punished for the crime of slander, for speaking words that created division and conflict, Shabriri had his eyes gouged out. But this punishment only made him a more perfect vessel for the frenzied flame's power. Without physical eyes, he could see more clearly the underlying unity that physical vision obscures. After his death, Shabriri gained the ability to inhabit other bodies, to speak through other voices, to spread the frenzied flame's influence by possessing those who were already suffering or desperate. His possession of Yura, the bloody finger hunter, demonstrates how the frenzied flame works. It does not typically corrupt the innocent, but rather offers itself as a solution to those who have already been driven to extremes by the failures of the existing order. The case of Vike provides perhaps the most tragic example of how the frenzied flame recruits its champions. Vike was a tarnished warrior who came closer than anyone else to becoming the next Elden Lord. He had gathered the necessary great runes, had proven himself in battle, had demonstrated all the qualities that should have made him the greater will's chosen champion. But when he learned that achieving his destiny would require the sacrifice of his finger maiden, he could not bring himself to complete the journey. Instead, Vike sought an alternative path that would allow him to spare his maiden's life. This search led him to the 3 fingers and the promise of the frenzied flame, that he could become a lord of a different sort, one who would not require such sacrifices because he would burn away the very system that demanded them. Vik's fall is not a simple story of corruption, but a tale of how even the most heroic individuals can be driven to cosmic rebellion when the price of righteousness becomes unbearable. The Lord of Frenzied Flame ending represents the ultimate victory of this cosmic force. Should the Tarnished choose to inherit the Frenzied Flame and become its avatar, the result is not the establishment of a new order, but the systematic annihilation of the old one. The Erdtree burns, the lands between are consumed, and everything that the Greater Will created returns to the undifferentiated state that existed before the fracturing of the One Great. This ending is often described as one of the bad endings, but this characterization may miss something important about what the Frenzied Flame represents. From one perspective, the Lord of Frenzied Flame ending is indeed catastrophic. It destroys everything and everyone in the lands between. But from another perspective, it can be seen as the ultimate act of cosmic mercy, freeing all consciousness from the artificial divisions and hierarchies that create suffering. The Frenzied Flame's vision is not simply destruction for its own sake, but destruction as a path to a form of liberation that cannot be achieved within the constraints of the existing order. It represents the recognition that some systems are so fundamentally flawed, so structurally unjust, that they cannot be reformed or redeemed. They can only be abolished entirely. Yet the terrible irony of the Frenzied Flame is that its solution to the problem of suffering is to eliminate suffering by eliminating the capacity to suffer, which is to say, by eliminating consciousness itself. In seeking to heal the wound of separation that the Greater Will created by fracturing the One Great, the Frenzied Flame would return reality to a state where neither suffering nor joy, neither love nor hatred, neither meaning nor meaninglessness could exist. The conflict between the Greater Will and the Frenzied Flame thus represents one of the fundamental tensions in existence itself, the tension between the need for structure and the desire for freedom, between the stability that comes from order and the vitality that comes from chaos, between the safety of boundaries and the terror of limitless possibility. As we continue our exploration of the other outer gods, we will see how each attempts to navigate this fundamental tension in its own way. But none approach the extremity of the Frenzied Flame, which alone among the cosmic forces seeks not to reshape reality, but to return it to the void from which it emerged. The Formless Mother, Blood and Truth. Among the outer gods that influence the lands between, few are as intimately connected to the themes of suffering, sacrifice, and transcendence as the entity known as the Formless Mother, also called the Mother of Truth. This ancient power represents a fascinating middle ground between the cosmic order of the Greater Will and the absolute chaos of the Frenzied Flame, offering instead a path to divinity through the embrace of pain and the ritual sanctification of blood. The Formless Mother's very name reveals important aspects of her nature. She is formless, lacking the defined structure that characterizes other divine entities. Unlike the Greater Will, which manifests through clearly defined symbols and hierarchies, or even the Frenzied Flame, which has its recognizable yellow fire, the Formless Mother exists as a presence rather than a form, an influence rather than an entity. This formlessness is not a limitation, but a strength. It allows her to inhabit spaces and consciousness that more defined powers cannot reach. The title Mother of Truth is equally significant. In the context of Elden Ring's lore, truth is not simply factual accuracy, but a deeper form of reality that lies beneath surface appearances. The truth that the Formless Mother embodies appears to be the recognition that suffering, pain, and bloodshed are not unfortunate accidents of existence, but fundamental aspects of reality that must be acknowledged and embraced, rather than denied or suppressed. This truth stands in direct opposition to the Greater Will's vision of a perfected order where suffering would be eliminated through proper structure and hierarchy. The Formless Mother suggests instead that suffering is not a problem to be solved, but a sacred mystery to be explored. That pain is not a defect in the cosmic design, but a pathway to enlightenment and transformation. The most prominent mortal associated with the Formless Mother is Mog, Lord of Blood, whose relationship with this outer god illustrates both the terrible power she offers and the profound transformation she demands. When Mog first encountered the Formless Mother in the depths beneath the lands between, he was already an outcast, one of the accursed Omen twins hidden away because their appearance challenged the aesthetic perfection that the Golden Order demanded. In that moment of contact, something fundamental changed within Mog. His accursed blood, previously a source of shame and isolation, erupted with divine fire. The curse that had made him an outcast became the foundation for a new form of power. This transformation reveals one of the Formless Mother's key characteristics. She does not typically choose the blessed or the favored, but rather those who have been wounded, rejected, or cursed by the existing order. The blood magic that flows from the Formless Mother is not mere sorcery, but a form of divine communion. Blood, in this context, represents life force in its most concentrated form, the liquid essence of vitality that connects all living beings. By working with blood, followers of the Formless Mother are working with the fundamental substrate of life itself. But this is not the clean, golden life force celebrated by the Golden Order. The blood associated with the Formless Mother is explicitly described as accursed blood, blood that carries within it the marks of suffering, rejection, and transformation. This accursed quality is not a contamination, but a blessing. It is blood that has been touched by divine power and made into something more than mere biological fluid. The blood flame that emanates from this divine blood represents a synthesis of destruction and creation that is unique among the magical forces in Elden Ring. Unlike the purely destructive power of the frenzied flame, or the preservative power of the Golden Order, blood flame destroys in order to transform, burns in order to purify and elevate. The fire that burns in accursed blood is not the fire of annihilation, but the fire of apotheosis. Mog's ultimate goal of elevating Miquella to godhood through the power of the Formless Mother reveals another crucial aspect of this outer god's nature. She possesses the ability to create new gods, to lift mortals to divine status through the proper application of her blood-based rituals. This power of elevation places her in direct competition with the Greater Will, which jealously guards the prerogative of creating and recognizing divine authority. The method by which this elevation occurs is telling. Rather than the clean, institutional process through which the Greater Will selects and empowers its Empyreans, the Formless Mother's path to divinity requires immersion in blood, acceptance of corruption, and willing participation in practices that the Golden Order would consider abhorrent. Her gods are not chosen from among the pure and worthy, but forged from those who have been marked by suffering and made strong through their embrace of that suffering. In the shadow of the Erd Tree expansion, we learn that the Formless Mother's influence extends far beyond Mog and his immediate followers. The blood fiend tribes of the Land of Shadow also serve this outer god, conducting their own blood rituals and maintaining their own traditions of communion with the Mother of Truth. This suggests that the Formless Mother's influence is ancient and widespread, predating and extending beyond the particular crisis that led to Mog's transformation. The Blood Fiend tribe's practices provide additional insight into the Formless Mother's nature. Their rituals are described as enriching their accursed blood with fire, suggesting a process of gradual transformation through repeated contact with divine power. This is not a one-time conversion, but an ongoing practice of spiritual development, a path of gradual deification through the systematic embrace of the Formless Mother's power. The relationship between the Formless Mother and the concept of truth becomes clearer when we consider what kinds of truths her followers are meant to acknowledge. These are not comfortable truths about cosmic justice or divine benevolence, but harsh truths about the role of violence, suffering, and sacrifice in the maintenance of life. The Mother of Truth reveals that existence feeds on pain, that growth requires destruction, that love and hate are more closely connected than comfortable philosophies would admit. This truth is particularly relevant to understanding the dynamics of power in the lands between. The Golden Order presents itself as a system of justice and righteousness, but it maintains its power through the systematic exclusion and oppression of those it deems unworthy. The Formless Mother's truth reveals the blood that underlies all power structures, the violence that maintains all order, the suffering that purchases all stability. In embracing this truth, followers of the Formless Mother do not become monsters, but rather beings who acknowledge monstrosity as an inescapable aspect of existence. They do not revel in cruelty for its own sake, but recognize cruelty as a tool that can be used for transcendent purposes. They do not seek to eliminate suffering, but to transform it into a source of power and wisdom. The outer god, Heirloom, introduced in the DLC, provides additional confirmation of the Formless Mother's nature and influence. The talisman depicts what appears to be an ancestor of the Hornsent, but its description suggests that this figure has been touched by another deity, a deity of the forsaken and the tortured. The imagery of eyes gouged by thorns and dwelling in eternal darkness perfectly captures the Formless Mother's domain over those who have been wounded by the world and found power in their wounds. The connection to the Hornsent is particularly significant because it suggests that the Formless Mother's influence may be tied to the cycle of revenge and retribution that defines much of Elden Ring's history. The Hornsent, who suffered under Messmer's crusade, may have found solace and power in the embrace of an outer god who specializes in transforming suffering into strength. The Formless Mother's vision of reality stands as a powerful alternative to both the sterile perfection of the greater will and the complete dissolution of the frenzied flame. She offers a path that acknowledges the necessity of suffering while providing a framework for finding meaning and power within that suffering. Hers is not the promise of an end to pain, but the promise that pain can be transformed into something sacred and powerful. This transformation is not without its costs. Those who follow the Formless Mother must be willing to abandon conventional notions of morality and propriety. They must be prepared to work with forces that civilized society considers abhorrent. They must find the strength to look directly into the darkest aspects of existence without flinching or turning away. Yet for those who can meet these demands, the Formless Mother offers rewards that other paths cannot provide. She offers the power to transform curse into blessing, weakness into strength, exclusion into a form of divine election. She provides a framework for understanding and working with the shadow aspects of existence that other spiritual paths seek to deny or overcome. As we continue our exploration of the outer gods, the Formless Mother serves as an important reminder that divinity in Elden Ring's universe is not necessarily synonymous with goodness or benevolence. The cosmic forces that shape reality operate according to their own logic, offering power and transformation to those willing to meet their demands, regardless of whether those demands align with conventional morality. The outer god of rot, decay and renewal, deep within the swamplands of Caelid, where the very air seems to pulse with malevolent life and the ground writhes with alien growth, we encounter the influence of one of the most terrifying and misunderstood of all the outer gods, the entity known as the God of Rot. This ancient power represents forces of decay, corruption, and transformation that operate according to a logic so alien to human understanding that even witnessing its works can drive observers to madness. Yet to dismiss the God of Rot as simply a force of destruction would be to misunderstand its fundamental nature. This outer god embodies one of the most essential principles of existence, The recognition that death and decay are not the opposite of life, but rather necessary components of life's eternal cycle. In the cosmic vision of the god of rot, putrefaction and renewal are not separate processes, but different phases of a single continuous transformation. The god of rot was, according to ancient lore, sealed away long ago by those who feared its power and failed to understand its purpose. This sealing represents more than mere imprisonment. It reflects a fundamental misunderstanding of the role that decay plays in the cosmic order. By attempting to eliminate rot and corruption from reality, the forces that sealed this outer god were essentially trying to stop the natural cycles that allow for renewal and rebirth. The consequences of this cosmic misunderstanding become apparent when we examine the nature of the scarlet rot that plagues the lands between. This is not natural decay, but rather a form of hyper-accelerated putrefaction that emerges when the natural processes of death and renewal are disrupted and suppressed. Like water building up behind a dam, the forces of decay and transformation that were meant to flow naturally through reality instead accumulated until they burst forth in an overwhelming flood. Melania, the Blade of Michaela, serves as the unwilling avatar of this sealed outer god, and her tragic story illustrates the terrible beauty and cosmic significance of the rot's influence. Born as an Empyrean, one of those rare individuals capable of serving as a vessel for divine power, Melania was inhabited by the god of rot from birth. This was not a blessing she sought or welcomed, but rather a cosmic burden imposed upon her by forces beyond her control or understanding. The relationship between Melania and the rot within her is one of the most complex and nuanced divine possessions depicted in Elden Ring's lore. Unlike other characters who embrace their connection to outer gods, Melania spent her entire life fighting against the influence growing within her. She wielded her legendary skill with the blade not just against external enemies, but in a constant internal battle against the cosmic force that sought to transform her into something beyond human recognition. This resistance gives Melania's story a tragic dimension that speaks to broader themes about fate, free will, and the price of divine power. She represents the cosmic victim, an individual caught between competing divine forces and forced to bear the consequences of conflicts she had no part in creating. Her brother Michaela's attempts to cure her of the rot can be understood as one of the most poignant examples of love confronting cosmic inevitability. The unalloyed gold that Michaela created specifically to ward off the influence of outer gods represents a fascinating attempt to create a space of resistance within a cosmos dominated by divine powers. This gold, untainted by any external influence, was meant to provide protection against the corruption that emanates from all forms of divine contact. That even this miraculous substance could only slow rather than stop the rot's influence speaks to the fundamental power of the forces involved. The Scarlet Rot's method of operation reveals important insights into the god of rot's nature and purpose. The rot does not simply destroy, it transforms. When it infects living beings, it does not kill them in the conventional sense, but rather converts them into new forms of life, more suited to the rot god's vision of reality. The kindred of rot that emerge from areas affected by the scarlet bloom are not corpses animated by necromancy, but rather evolutionary adaptations, new forms of consciousness that can thrive in environments that would be lethal to unmodified life. This transformative aspect of the rot connects to deeper themes about evolution, adaptation, and the cost of progress. From the god of rot's perspective, the current forms of life in the lands between represent evolutionary dead ends. Forms that have become too rigid, too resistant to change, too invested in maintaining their current state to adapt to changing cosmic conditions. The rot serves as a catalyst for necessary transformation, forcing evolution that would otherwise take millennia to occur naturally. The scarlet blooms that mark significant manifestations of the rot's power are described in terms that emphasize both their beauty and their terror. These are not random outbreaks of disease, but rather carefully orchestrated transformations. moments when the god of rot's influence becomes strong enough to reshape reality on a massive scale. Each bloom represents a step toward the ultimate goal, the transformation of the entire world into a form that can serve as a proper vessel for this outer god's consciousness. Malenia's 3 prophesied blooms reveal the gradual nature of this cosmic transformation. Her first bloom occurred during her battle with Rudon in Caelid, an event so catastrophic that it transformed an entire region into a nightmare landscape of perpetual decay. Her second bloom takes place during her boss fight with the Tarnished, marking another step in her transformation from mortal Empyrean to divine avatar. The third and final bloom, should it occur, would complete her metamorphosis into a true goddess of rot. This gradual transformation process reflects an important aspect of how the god of rot operates. Unlike other outer gods that might seek immediate and total transformation, the god of rot works through slow, patient, inexorable change. It understands that lasting transformation requires time to take root, that hasty conversions often result in unstable outcomes. The rot spreads slowly but inevitably, giving those it touches time to adapt to their new forms of existence. The Lake of Rot, hidden deep beneath the lands between, provides perhaps the most direct glimpse we have of what reality would look like under the complete dominance of the god of rot. This vast underground sea of scarlet corruption is not a place of death, but rather of alien life. Forms of existence so transformed by the rot's influence that they no longer resemble anything that evolved under the current cosmic order. The creatures that inhabit the Lake of Rot are not monsters in the conventional sense, but rather successful adaptations to an environment thoroughly transformed by the god of rot's influence. They represent evolutionary possibilities that could never emerge under the constraints of the current cosmic order. Life forms that have embraced rather than resisted the transformative power of decay and renewal. The Astal, natural born of the void which lurks in the depths connected to the Lake of Rot, may represent the ultimate expression of the god of rot's evolutionary vision. This cosmic entity, with its crystalline structure and alien intelligence, embodies what life might become when freed from the constraints of conventional biology and allowed to evolve according to principles of pure transformation. The relationship between the god of rot and the cosmic themes of rebirth becomes clearer when we consider the cyclical nature of decay and renewal in natural systems. In forests, the death and decomposition of trees provides the nutrients necessary for new growth. In ecosystems, the elimination of dominant species creates opportunities for new forms of life to flourish. The god of rot represents this principle applied on a cosmic scale. The recognition that sometimes entire civilizations, entire ways of being, must die to make room for new possibilities. This perspective provides a different lens through which to view the conflict between the god of rot and the Golden Order. The Greater Will's vision of eternal, unchanging perfection is, from the rot god's perspective, a form of cosmic stagnation that prevents the natural evolution of consciousness and reality. By maintaining strict hierarchies and suppressing change, the Golden Order has created conditions that make catastrophic transformation inevitable. The tragedy of the god of rot is that its influence is experienced as curse rather than blessing by those who encounter it. Because the current inhabitants of the lands between evolved under different cosmic conditions, they lack the spiritual and biological frameworks necessary to appreciate or benefit from the transformations the rot offers. They experience its touch as corruption rather than evolution, as death rather than metamorphosis. Yet for those rare individuals who can embrace rather than resist the rot's influence, it offers gifts that no other power can provide. The ability to thrive in environments that would kill others, to adapt rapidly to changing conditions, to see beauty in forms of existence that terrify the unenlightened. These are the rewards that await those who can accept the god of rot's vision of reality. The sealed nature of this outer god creates unique dynamics in how its influence manifests. Unlike other cosmic forces that can work through established institutions and recognized channels, the God of Rot must work through cracks in reality, through individuals who have been touched by its power against their will, through the gradual spread of influence that cannot be easily detected or countered by the established order. This hidden, suppressed quality gives the God of Rot's influence a subversive character that distinguishes it from other forms of divine power. Its gifts come not through official recognition or institutional blessing, but through secret transformation, through changes that occur below the threshold of conscious awareness, through evolution that happens whether or not it is welcomed or understood. As we continue our exploration of the outer gods, the God of Rot serves as a crucial reminder that cosmic forces operate according to their own logic rather than human preferences. What appears as corruption from one perspective may be evolution from another. What seems like curse may actually be opportunity. The challenge for mortals is not necessarily to resist these cosmic influences, but to find ways of working with them that preserve what is valuable while allowing for necessary transformation. The Fell God, ancient fire and forgotten wrath. In the frozen heights of the mountaintops of the giants, where howling winds carry echoes of an ancient war, and the very landscape bears scars of cosmic conflict, we encounter the influence of one of the most primordial and misunderstood of all the outer gods, the entity known as the Fell God. This ancient deity of fire and forge represents forces that predate the Golden Order by eons, embodying a form of divine power that is both more primitive and more fundamental than the sophisticated cosmic architectures we have examined thus far. The Fell God's domain is not the refined manipulation of reality that characterizes other outer gods, but rather the raw, elemental force of creation through destruction. This is fire in its most essential form, not the controlled flame of hearth and forge, but the wild conflagration that reduces entire worlds to ash and provides the raw material from which new realities can be built. It is the fire of stars being born and civilizations being consumed, the flame that burns in the heart of every forge and the cremation pyre of every empire. The relationship between the Fell God and the fire giants reveals important insights into how this outer god operates. Unlike other cosmic entities that might work through individual chosen champions or elaborate institutional structures, the Fell God appears to have formed a collective bond with an entire race. The fire giants were not simply worshippers of this deity, but rather living vessels for its power, their massive bodies serving as furnaces in which the Fell God's flame could burn. This collective incarnation represents a fundamentally different approach to divine manifestation. Where other outer gods might seek to elevate individual mortals to godhood, the Fell God distributed its essence throughout an entire people, making each fire giant a partial avatar of its cosmic flame. Their great size, their resistance to cold, their mastery of fire magic. All of these characteristics can be understood as adaptations that allowed them to serve as living repositories for a fragment of divine fire. The war between Queen Merica and the fire giants takes on deeper significance when understood as a conflict between competing cosmic visions. This was not merely a political struggle for territorial control, but rather a theological war between different understandings of what reality should become. The Fell God represented an older, more chaotic approach to cosmic order, one where change occurred through periodic conflagrations that swept away the old to make room for the new. The Greater Will's Order, by contrast, sought to eliminate such cyclical destruction, to create a stable reality where change occurred only according to divine plan rather than through natural catastrophe. From this perspective, the fire giants and their Fell God represented an existential threat not just to the Golden Order's political control, but to its fundamental vision of how reality should operate. The prophetic significance of the Fell God's flame adds another layer of complexity to this cosmic conflict. The flame of ruin was prophesied to burn the Erd tree, to consume the very symbol and source of the Golden Order's power. This prophecy was not merely a threat, but a cosmic inevitability, a recognition that all orders, no matter how perfect they might appear, eventually become corrupt and must be consumed to make way for renewal. America's response to this prophecy reveals the fundamental weakness in the greater will's approach to cosmic order. Rather than finding ways to work with the natural cycles of destruction and renewal, the Golden Order sought to prevent them entirely. The war against the fire giants was an attempt to eliminate the very possibility of cosmic renewal, to create a reality so perfect and stable that it would never need to be replaced. The curse placed upon the last fire giant to tend the fell god's flame for all eternity represents one of the most cruel and short-sighted acts of divine punishment in Elden Ring's lore. By forcing this being to preserve the very force that the Golden Order sought to eliminate, America ensured that the power to destroy her order would survive even after the apparent victory over the fire giants. This curse reveals an important truth about the relationship between order and chaos, between preservation and destruction. The greater will's order requires the existence of the very forces it opposes. Without the threat of destruction, there would be no need for preservation. Without the possibility of change, the concept of stability becomes meaningless. The fell god's flame serves as the shadow that defines the light of the Golden Order. The furnace golems introduced in the Shadow of the Erd Tree expansion provide additional insight into the fell god's nature and the fear it inspired in other powers. These massive war machines, with their horned visages designed to evoke the fell god's appearance, were created specifically to terrorize the Hornsent during Messmer's crusade. The psychological warfare implicit in this design choice reveals how deeply the image of the fell god was embedded in the collective unconscious of the lands between. That these golems were powered by the bodies of giants suggests a perverse form of communion with the fell god's power. Rather than allowing the giants to serve as willing vessels for divine flame, Messmer's forces enslaved dead giants to power war machines designed to spread terror and destruction. This represents a corruption of the fell god's original relationship with the giants, turning sacred communion into mechanical exploitation. The fire monks who tended the fell god's flame after the giants' defeat provide another perspective on this outer god's influence. These human servants were not born with the natural resistance to flame that characterized the giants, yet they found ways to work with and channel the fell god's power. Their gradual transformation under the influence of the flame they tended reveals how sustained contact with this cosmic force can reshape not just individual consciousness, but entire biological systems. The madness that eventually consumed many of the fire monks illustrates one of the fundamental challenges of working with the fell god's power. Unlike other forms of divine influence that might operate through gradual transformation or intellectual understanding, the fell god's flame demands a more direct and visceral form of communion. Those who cannot withstand its intensity are not simply rejected, but consumed, transformed into something that retains human form, but no longer possesses human consciousness. The one-eyed visage that appears on the torsos of the fire giants and manifests during the final battle with the last of their kind reveals important iconographic elements associated with the fell god. The single eye suggests a form of cosmic vision that sees reality differently than ordinary perception, perhaps a perspective that perceives the underlying unity beneath apparent multiplicity, or the inevitable end that awaits all temporary forms. This cyclopean imagery connects the fell god to broader themes about vision, insight, and the terrible knowledge that comes with divine awareness. To see with the fell god's eye is to perceive the impermanence of all structures, the futility of all attempts at permanent order, the cosmic fire that burns at the heart of all existence, waiting to consume whatever temporary forms reality might assume. The flame of ruin that burns eternally in the giant's forge represents more than mere fire. It is a physical manifestation of cosmic principle, a piece of fundamental reality made visible and tangible. This flame cannot be extinguished because it represents something that exists at a more basic level than the physical phenomena through which it manifests. It is the fire that burns in every star, the heat that drives every chemical reaction, the energy that powers every transformation. The ritual significance of this flame becomes apparent when we consider its role in the various endings of Elden Ring. To burn the Erd Tree and enable the transformation of the cosmic order, the tarnished must kindle themselves with the flame of ruin. This is not simply using fire as a tool, but rather accepting the fell god's flame into oneself, becoming a conduit through which this cosmic force can accomplish its destined work. This communion reveals the fell god's fundamental nature as a force of necessary destruction. Unlike the nihilistic annihilation promised by the frenzied flame, the fell god's destruction serves a purpose. It clears away the old to make space for the new. It is the fire of the forest floor that enables new growth, the forge fire that melts down old metal to create new tools, the cremation flame that returns the dead to the cosmic cycles from which they emerged. The tragedy of the fell god is that its role as a force of renewal has been forgotten, remembered only as a source of destruction and threat. The cosmic amnesia that surrounds this entity reflects broader patterns in how established orders relate to the forces that might replace them. Rather than acknowledging the necessity of periodic renewal, the Golden Order chose to demonize and suppress the very forces that could have enabled healthy transformation. As we continue our exploration of the outer gods, the Fell God serves as a crucial reminder that destruction and creation are not opposite forces, but rather complementary aspects of a single cosmic process. The fire that consumes is the same fire that enables new life. The force that threatens existing order is the same force that makes new order possible. The challenge for any cosmic system is not to eliminate such forces, but to find ways of working with them constructively. The outer god of death, ancient dominion of the twin bird, before the golden light of the Erd Tree illuminated the lands between, before Queen Merica established her eternal order, before the very concept of grace was known to mortal beings, another power held dominion over the realm of the dead and the mysteries of mortality itself. This ancient entity, known to us primarily through its envoy, the twin bird, represents one of the oldest and most fundamental forms of cosmic authority: the power to determine the meaning and mechanism of death itself. The outer god of death embodies a vision of mortality that stands in stark contrast to the artificial interventions that would later characterize the Golden Order. Where Merica's regime would seek to control and manipulate death through the binding of destined death, this earlier cosmic authority worked with death as a natural process, a fundamental aspect of existence that required reverence rather than suppression. The twin bird, serving as the primary envoy of this death god, presents one of the most intriguing symbolic figures in all of Elden Ring's cosmology. Depicted as a creature with two heads, one bearing bright red feathers, the other deep blue plumage, the twin bird embodies the dual nature of death itself. The red head represents the violent, passionate aspect of death. Death in battle, death through conflict, death that comes with fire and blood. The blue head represents the peaceful, contemplative aspect of death, natural expiration, quiet passing, death as a rest and release. This duality suggests that the outer god of death understood mortality as encompassing multiple modes and meanings rather than a single, uniform experience. Unlike the later Golden Order, which would attempt to standardize death through institutional control, this ancient power celebrated the diversity of ways in which life could come to its end. The Deathbirds, offspring of the twin bird, served as the practical administrators of this cosmic order. These skeletal, ethereal creatures were not merely harbingers of doom, but rather sacred functionaries in a complex system of death rites and spiritual transformation. Their role was to ensure that death occurred according to proper cosmic principles, that the transition from life to whatever comes after proceeded in harmony with divine will. The ghost flame that burns within and around the death birds represents a fundamentally different relationship between death and fire than what we encounter in other cosmic systems. Unlike the destructive flames of the fell god or the maddening fire of the frenzied flame, ghost flame is described as cold burning, suggesting a form of spiritual rather than physical combustion. This is the fire that burns away the attachments that bind souls to material existence without destroying the essential consciousness that survives bodily death. The ancient death rites administered by the death birds reveal sophisticated understanding of the spiritual mechanics of mortality. Rather than simply disposing of corpses, these rituals were designed to facilitate the proper transition of consciousness from embodied to disembodied states. The ghost flame kilns where bodies were burned were not crematoriums but transformation chambers, places where the dross of material existence was burned away to reveal the purified spiritual essence beneath. The vengeful spirits that arose from these ghost flame cremations were not accidents or failures of the death rites, but rather intended outcomes. These spirits represented the emotional and psychic residues that needed to be processed and resolved before full spiritual liberation could occur. Rather than suppressing or banishing such spirits, the death god's system provided mechanisms for their expression and eventual resolution. This approach to death reveals a cosmic philosophy based on acceptance rather than control, on working with natural processes rather than attempting to override them. The outer god of death appears to have understood that mortality is not a problem to be solved, but rather a mystery to be honored, a transition to be facilitated with proper reverence and understanding. The servants of death who maintained this ancient system were not grim reapers or harbingers of doom, but rather spiritual guides and facilitators. They helped the dying to prepare for their transition, ensured that proper rites were observed, and maintained the cosmic machinery that enabled consciousness to flow smoothly from embodied to disembodied states. Their role was therapeutic rather than punitive, supportive rather than threatening. The concept of meaningful death that emerges from descriptions of this ancient order suggests that the death god valued quality over quantity, significance over mere duration. Those who faced death with courage and honor were granted special recognition and assistance. Death in battle was particularly celebrated, suggesting that the conscious choice to risk one's life for principles or purposes greater than mere survival was seen as a form of spiritual achievement. The lamplight that guided worthy souls through the spirit world parallels in many ways the grace that would later emanate from the Erd tree, but with crucial differences. Where grace represents divine favor, bestowed according to institutional criteria, the lamplight appears to have been earned through personal conduct and spiritual development. It was not a gift from above, but rather a reflection of the soul's own luminosity, made visible through proper relationship with death. The eclipse symbolism associated with this death, God provides additional insight into its cosmic significance. Eclipses represent moments when the normal order of celestial bodies is temporarily disrupted, when hidden aspects of reality become visible, when the boundary between day and night becomes ambiguous. In the context of death symbolism, the eclipse suggests the liminal space between life and death, the twilight realm where transitions occur. The connection between eclipses and the granting of life to soulless bones suggests that the death god possessed not only the power to facilitate death, but also the ability to reverse it under certain circumstances. This was not the crude resurrection magic that would later characterize some forms of necromancy, but rather a sophisticated understanding of the conditions under which consciousness could be called back into material form. The white-winged maidens who served as additional envoys of the death god represent the gentler, more nurturing aspects of this cosmic authority. Where the Deathbirds might be seen as the Death God's warriors or administrators, the white-winged maidens appear to have served as its healers and comforters, providing spiritual support to those approaching the threshold of mortality. The relationship between the outer god of death and the later development of those who live in death reveals how cosmic authorities can persist even when their official recognition has been withdrawn. When the Golden Order bound destined death and attempted to control mortality through institutional means, it created conditions that led to the emergence of undeath, a state that represents neither proper life nor proper death, but rather a grotesque parody of both. The return of the Deathbirds as those who live in death can be understood as a cosmic correction, an attempt by the ancient death god to restore proper spiritual mechanics to a world that had lost its way. These returning entities carry within them the memory of how death was meant to function, the knowledge of proper transitions that the Golden Order's interventions had disrupted. The Helfen, mentioned in connection with various ghost flame weapons, appears to have been a sacred site associated with the death god's worship. Described as a lampwood that guides the dead of the spirit world, the Helfen represents the infrastructure that the death god established to facilitate proper spiritual transitions. Like a lighthouse for souls navigating the treacherous waters between life and death, it provided orientation and guidance during the most vulnerable moments of consciousness. The gradual suppression of the death god's influence and the forgetting of proper death rites represents one of the great spiritual tragedies of Elden Ring's cosmological history. In attempting to eliminate death through institutional control, the Golden Order not only failed to achieve its goal, but actually made death more terrible and meaningful transition more difficult. The persistence of death hexes and ghost flame sorceries, even after the official suppression of the death god's worship, suggests that spiritual realities cannot be eliminated through mere institutional decree. The forces that the death god represented, the need for proper transition, the requirement for spiritual guidance during mortality, the cosmic necessity of death as transformation rather than termination, continue to operate, regardless of whether they are officially acknowledged. As we continue our exploration of the outer gods, the entity behind the twin bird serves as a powerful reminder that cosmic forces often represent solutions to existential problems that cannot be solved through political or institutional means. Death, like other fundamental aspects of existence, requires spiritual rather than administrative approaches. The attempt to control such forces through external authority inevitably leads to their corruption and the emergence of pathological alternatives. The god-devouring serpent, eagerly and primordial hunger. In the volcanic depths of Matgelmir, where lava flows like rivers of molten hatred and the very air shimmers with supernatural heat, we encounter one of the most enigmatic and terrifying manifestations of outer god influence, the entity known as Eigle, the god-devouring serpent. This massive, ancient creature represents something far more complex than a mere monster or even a simple divine beast. It embodies a form of cosmic hunger that threatens not just individual lives, but the very concept of divinity itself. The name God-Devouring Serpent reveals the creature's fundamental nature and cosmic significance. This is not a being that simply kills gods, but one that literally consumes them, absorbing their essence and making their power part of its own. In a universe where divine authority represents the ultimate form of power and cosmic legitimacy, a creature capable of devouring gods represents an existential threat to the entire spiritual hierarchy that structures reality. The serpent's association with Matgelmir connects it to one of the most primordial landscapes in the lands between. This volcanic region predates the Golden Order by eons, representing geological and spiritual forces that emerged from the Earth's molten core long before the current cosmic dispensation established itself. The serpent's presence in this ancient place suggests that it represents powers that predate and potentially transcend the current arrangement of divine authorities. The Temple of Aegle, where worship of the serpent was conducted in ages past, reveals that this creature was not always seen as a monster, but rather as a legitimate object of religious devotion. The sacrificial practices associated with this worship suggest that the serpent's hunger was understood by its followers as a cosmic necessity rather than mere predatory behavior. Those who offered themselves to be devoured may have believed they were participating in a form of divine communion that transcended ordinary mortality. The serpent hunter spear, created specifically to combat the god-devouring serpent, represents one of the most significant artifacts in Elden Ring's arsenal of legendary weapons. This spear's true power manifests only when confronting its intended target, suggesting that it was crafted not merely as a weapon, but as a cosmic instrument designed to counter a specific form of divine threat. The very existence of such a weapon implies that the serpent's power was recognized as sufficiently dangerous to require specialized divine intervention. Rykard's decision to offer himself to the serpent during the shattering represents one of the most dramatic transformations in the entire conflict among the demigods. This was not a moment of madness or desperation, but rather a calculated choice to embrace a form of power that transcended the limitations of ordinary divinity. By allowing himself to be devoured, Rykard sought to become something greater than a mere demigod, a being capable of challenging and potentially consuming the gods themselves. The blasphemous nature of this transformation cannot be overstated. In a cosmos where divine hierarchy represents the fundamental organizing principle of reality, the choice to become a god-eater represents the ultimate act of cosmic rebellion. Rykard was not simply rejecting the authority of the greater will, but positioning himself as a threat to divine authority itself, regardless of which particular god might claim supremacy. The phrase, "Together, we will devour the very gods," that Rykard speaks during his boss encounter, reveals the serpent's ultimate ambition. This is not a creature motivated by simple hunger or territorial instinct, but rather by a cosmic vision that envisions the elimination of all divine authority. From the serpent's perspective, gods represent artificial impositions upon natural reality, power structures that constrain and limit the free flow of cosmic energy. The man-serpents that emerge from the union of Rykard and Aegle represent a new form of life that combines human consciousness with serpentine power. These creatures are not simply monsters, but rather evolved beings that have transcended the limitations of both humanity and ordinary serpentine existence. They embody the serpent's vision of what reality could become when freed from the constraints imposed by divine authority. The immortal nature of the god-devouring serpent raises profound questions about the relationship between divinity and mortality in Elden Ring's cosmos. If gods are supposed to represent eternal, unchanging principles, what does it mean for a creature to exist that can consume such principles and make them part of its own mutable nature? The serpent's immortality may represent a more fundamental form of eternity than the static permanence that characterizes other forms of divine existence. The volcanic environment of Matgelmir provides the perfect setting for the serpent's activities. Volcanoes represent points where the Earth's molten core breaks through to the surface, where the hidden foundations of reality become visible and active. In this context, the serpent can be understood as a creature of the depths, something that emerges from the fundamental layers of reality that underlie all surface appearances. The relationship between the god-devouring serpent and the broader serpent symbolism that appears throughout Elden Ring's lore suggests that Aegle may be connected to other serpentine entities and powers. The abyssal serpent that dwells within Messmer, the ancient serpent deity mentioned in various item descriptions, and even the serpentine imagery associated with certain aspects of the Crucible, all point toward a deeper serpentine current that runs through the cosmos. This serpentine symbolism traditionally represents wisdom, transformation, and the cyclical nature of existence. Serpents shed their skins, symbolically dying and being reborn in an endless cycle of renewal. They move close to the earth, suggesting connection to fundamental rather than elevated realities. Their ability to swallow prey larger than themselves represents a form of consumption that transcends normal physical limitations. In the context of the god-devouring serpent, these traditional associations take on cosmic significance. The serpent's consumption of gods may represent a necessary form of cosmic renewal, a process by which ossified divine structures are broken down and their essence recycled into new forms of spiritual reality. From this perspective, the serpent serves as a cosmic digestive system, processing and transforming divine authority rather than simply destroying it. The fear that the serpent inspires in other divine powers may stem not from its destructive capacity, but from its transformative potential. Gods, by their nature, represent fixed principles and unchanging authorities. A creature capable of consuming and transforming such principles threatens not just individual divine beings, but the entire concept of stable, eternal divine authority. The connection between the god-devouring serpent and themes of blasphemy and heresy reveals important insights into how cosmic authorities maintain their power. Blasphemy, in this context, is not simply offensive speech, but rather the assertion of alternative cosmic principles that challenge established divine hierarchies. The serpent embodies the ultimate blasphemy, the claim that divine authority itself is not sacred, but rather a form of cosmic food that can be consumed and digested. The volcanic fires of Mat Gelmir may represent a form of cosmic digestion, a process by which the serpent breaks down and transforms the divine essence it consumes. Fire, in this context, is not merely destructive but transformative, serving as the medium through which one form of reality is converted into another. The serpent's association with these fires suggests that its consumption of gods is not mere predation but rather a form of cosmic alchemy. The tragic irony of Royakard's transformation is that in seeking to become powerful enough to devour gods, he himself became food for the cosmic hunger he sought to embody. His consciousness was not eliminated, but rather absorbed into something larger and more alien than individual identity could contain. The question of whether Roykard still exists within the serpents, or has been completely digested, remains one of the most profound mysteries of his transformation. The god-devouring serpent's vision of reality represents perhaps the most radical alternative to conventional divine authority presented in Elden Ring's cosmos. Rather than replacing one god with another, or reforming existing divine structures, the serpent offers the possibility of a reality without gods entirely. A cosmos where power flows freely rather than being concentrated in eternal, unchanging authorities. As we continue our exploration of the outer gods, Eagle serves as a powerful reminder that even cosmic forces are not necessarily permanent or unchangeable. The existence of a creature capable of consuming gods suggests that divine authority, no matter how established or apparently eternal, remains vulnerable to challenges that emerge from the fundamental layers of reality itself. The moon deities, dark moon, and celestial mysteries. High above the terrestrial conflicts that rage across the lands between, beyond the reach of earthbound armies, and the immediate influence of the Erd Tree's golden light, celestial powers observe and influence the world below through mechanisms as subtle as they are profound. Among these cosmic entities, the moon deities represent some of the most enigmatic and intellectually sophisticated forms of divine authority in Elden Ring's cosmological hierarchy. The relationship between the various moon entities, the full moon associated with Renala, the dark moon encountered by Ronnie, and the twin moons claimed by R'Lana, reveals a complex celestial hierarchy that operates according to principles quite different from the more direct divine interventions we have examined thus far. These are not gods that demand worship through blood sacrifice or cosmic transformation through suffering, but rather entities that work through knowledge, wisdom, and the patient manipulation of fate itself. The dark moon, which Ronnie encountered during her youth, represents perhaps the most significant of these celestial powers in terms of its impact on the events of Elden Ring's narrative. Described as cold and leaden, this entity embodies a form of cosmic authority that is simultaneously distant and intimate, alien and personal. The Dark Moon's influence on Ronnie was not a violent possession or gradual corruption, but rather an intellectual and spiritual awakening that revealed new possibilities for understanding and reshaping reality. Ronnie's relationship with the Dark Moon illustrates a fundamentally different approach to divine communion than what we see with other outer gods. Rather than being chosen as a vessel or gradually transformed by cosmic influence, Ronnie appears to have encountered the Dark Moon as an equal, engaging with it through dialogue and negotiation rather than submission and service. This suggests that the moon deities operate through consensus and collaboration rather than domination and control. The sorceries associated with the moon deities reveal their connection to intellectual and mystical traditions that predate and transcend the Golden Order's emphasis on faith-based miracles. Glintstone sorcery, with its emphasis on study, experimentation, and the manipulation of cosmic forces through understanding rather than devotion, represents a completely different approach to engaging with divine power. Where miracles require faith in established truths, sorceries require the courage to explore unknown possibilities. The Academy of Raya Lucaria serves as the institutional embodiment of the moon deity's influence on mortal civilization. This center of learning and magical research represents an alternative to the faith-based institutions of the Golden Order, offering a path to power and understanding that depends on intellectual achievement rather than divine favor. The Academy's scholars seek to comprehend and harness cosmic forces through study and experimentation, rather than prayer and submission. The suppression of Kyrian astrology during the height of the Golden Order reveals the competitive relationship between lunar and solar forms of cosmic authority. Astrology, the practice of reading fate and destiny in the movements of celestial bodies, represents a challenge to the Golden Order's claim to exclusive divine authority. If fate can be read in the stars rather than received through grace, then the Greater Will's monopoly on cosmic guidance becomes questionable. The restoration of astrology through Ronnie's questline, and the eventual Age of Stars ending, represents more than mere political change. It signifies a fundamental shift in how cosmic authority operates in the world. The Age of Stars promises a reality where destiny is determined by celestial mechanics rather than divine decree, where fate can be studied and understood rather than simply accepted as unchangeable divine will. The Dark Moon's role in this cosmic revolution is particularly significant because it represents a form of divine power that explicitly supports mortal agency rather than divine control. Unlike other outer gods that seek to transform reality according to their own visions, the Dark Moon appears to value the capacity of conscious beings to choose their own destinies and create their own meanings. The Age of Stars is not imposed by divine fiat, but achieved through mortal effort, guided by celestial wisdom. The symbolism of darkness associated with the Dark Moon should not be understood as malevolent or evil, but rather as representative of the unknown, the mysterious, the realm of infinite possibility that exists beyond the boundaries of established knowledge. Darkness in this context represents not the absence of light, but rather the presence of possibilities that have not yet been illuminated and defined by conscious awareness. The cold quality attributed to the Dark Moon suggests a form of cosmic detachment that allows for objective assessment of reality without the emotional biases that characterize more passionate forms of divine influence. This coldness is not indifference, but rather the clarity that comes from seeing reality as it truly is, rather than as one might wish it to be or fear it might become. The sorceries that derive from lunar influence often involve the manipulation of gravity, suggesting that the moon deities possess power over one of the fundamental forces that structure physical reality. Gravity represents the invisible bonds that hold the cosmos together, the forces that determine how matter and energy interact across vast distances. Mastery of gravitational forces implies understanding of cosmic mechanics at the deepest possible level. The connection between lunar influence and the fate of the stars suggests that the moon deities possess knowledge of cosmic cycles that operate on scales far beyond ordinary mortal comprehension. They understand not just the immediate political and spiritual conflicts that occupy the attention of terrestrial powers, but the vast astronomical processes that will ultimately determine the fate of entire civilizations and cosmic orders. The twin moons associated with R'hllana introduce additional complexity to our understanding of lunar divine authority. The image of two moons nestled against one another suggests forms of cosmic partnership and cooperation that contrast sharply with the competitive relationships we see among other divine powers. These twin moons may represent complementary aspects of lunar authority working in harmony rather than conflict. R'hllana's devotion to both the twin moons and Messmer's cause illustrates how lunar influence can coexist with other forms of cosmic authority without necessarily being corrupted or compromised by them. Her ability to maintain loyalty to celestial powers while participating in terrestrial conflicts suggests that lunar deities operate on levels of reality that transcend immediate political concerns. The relationship between lunar influence and nighttime activities reveals the moon deities' connection to aspects of reality that operate outside the normal patterns of diurnal existence. Night represents not just the absence of day, but the presence of different forms of consciousness, different ways of perceiving and interacting with reality. Lunar powers work through dreams, visions, and forms of awareness that emerge when ordinary daytime consciousness relaxes its grip on perception. The Academy's research into the primeval current and its connection to the stars suggests that lunar deities may be manifestations of even more fundamental cosmic forces. The primeval current appears to represent the underlying energy that powers all magical phenomena, a cosmic river of power that flows through and connects all aspects of reality. The moon deities may serve as focal points or channeling mechanisms for this more basic cosmic energy. The preservation of Kyrian royal bloodlines and their special connection to lunar powers suggests that genetic and hereditary factors play important roles in determining who can effectively commune with celestial authorities. Unlike other forms of divine favor that might be earned through devotion or suffering, lunar influence appears to require specific biological and spiritual predispositions that cannot be acquired through effort alone. The relationship between lunar sorcery and the manipulation of illusion and reality reveals the moon deities' concern with questions of knowledge, perception, and truth. Many lunar sorceries involve creating false images or manipulating the appearance of reality, suggesting that these cosmic powers understand the extent to which perceived reality depends on the limitations and biases of the perceiving consciousness. This emphasis on illusion and perception connects to deeper philosophical questions about the nature of reality itself. If reality can be manipulated through sufficient understanding of its underlying mechanisms, then the distinction between real and illusory becomes less significant than the question of which version of reality best serves conscious purposes and cosmic evolution. As we continue our exploration of the outer gods, the moon deities serve as crucial examples of how cosmic authority can operate through enhancement of mortal capabilities rather than replacement of mortal agency. They represent a form of divine influence that seeks to expand consciousness rather than constrain it, to illuminate possibilities rather than impose predetermined destinies. The eventual triumph of lunar influence in Ronnie's ending suggests that the cosmos may naturally evolve toward forms of authority that support rather than suppress the development of conscious beings. The Age of Stars represents not just a political victory, but a cosmic maturation, a movement toward forms of divine influence that enhance rather than diminish the capacity for independent thought and action. The primeval current, the wellspring of magical reality. Beneath the surface, conflicts between competing outer gods, underlying the dramatic transformations and cosmic rebellions that characterize Elden Ring's narrative, flows a more fundamental force that may predate and transcend all other forms of cosmic authority, the mysterious entity or principle known as the primeval current. This esoteric power represents something closer to the fundamental substrate of magical reality itself, the underlying energy from which all other forms of supernatural phenomena may derive their ultimate power. The primeval current's nature is perhaps the most enigmatic of all the cosmic forces we encounter in Elden Ring's lore. Unlike other outer gods that have clear agendas, recognizable forms of influence, and identifiable champions, the primeval current appears to operate as a more basic principle of magical reality, the cosmic river of energy that powers all sorcerous phenomena regardless of their specific applications or theoretical frameworks. The connection between the primeval current and glintstone sorcery reveals important insights into the fundamental nature of magical power in Elden Ring's universe. Glintstone, with its crystalline structure and ability to focus and channel magical energy, may represent solidified fragments of the primeval current itself, cosmic energy that has been condensed into physical form and made available for manipulation by conscious beings. The scholars associated with the Academy of Raya Lucaria, particularly the primeval sorcerers Lusat and Azur, devoted their lives to achieving direct communion with the primeval current, rather than working through intermediary magical systems or established theoretical frameworks. Their transformation into beings of living glintstone suggests that such communion is possible, but comes at the cost of ordinary human consciousness and physical form. Sorceress Selen's questline provides the most detailed exploration of what it means to seek direct contact with the primeval current. Her research into the primeval arts and her ultimate goal of restoring the primeval current to its proper place in the cosmic order reveal both the promise and the danger inherent in working with such fundamental forces. Selen's eventual transformation suggests that the human mind and body are not naturally equipped to handle direct exposure to cosmic forces of such magnitude. The relationship between the primeval current and the stars suggests that this cosmic force may be connected to the astronomical processes that govern the larger universe. Stars, in Elden Ring's cosmology, appear to represent not just distant suns, but actual sources of cosmic power, celestial engines that generate and distribute the energy that makes magical phenomena possible throughout the cosmos. The concept of fate being writ in the night skies takes on deeper significance when understood in the context of the primeval current. If the stars are sources of magical energy, and if fate represents the patterns according to which this energy flows through reality, then astrology becomes not mere superstition, but rather a practical science for understanding and potentially manipulating the fundamental forces that shape existence. The suppression of star reading and astronomical magic during the height of the Golden Order may represent an attempt to sever mortal beings' connection to the primeval current and force them to rely exclusively on the controlled magical systems approved by the Greater Will. By limiting access to cosmic energy sources, the Golden Order could maintain tighter control over who could access supernatural power and how such power could be used. The falling star beasts that occasionally appear in the lands between may represent direct manifestations of the primeval current's influence on the physical world. These creatures, with their crystalline structure and obvious connection to astronomical phenomena, embody the principle of cosmic energy taking on material form and independent consciousness. They serve as reminders that the forces underlying magical reality are not mere abstractions, but active, autonomous powers capable of direct intervention in worldly affairs. The connection between the primeval current and gravity magic reveals additional dimensions of this cosmic force's significance. Gravity represents one of the fundamental forces that structure physical reality, determining how matter and energy interact across space and time. Mastery of gravitational magic suggests access to cosmic principles that operate at the deepest possible level of material existence. The Alabaster Lords and Onyx Lords, with their mastery of gravitational forces and their obvious non-human nature, may represent beings that achieved successful communion with the primeval current, without losing their essential consciousness or capacity for independent action. They serve as examples of what mortal beings might become if they could find ways of working with cosmic forces that preserved rather than obliterated individual identity. The relationship between the primeval current and the creation of artificial life forms suggests that this cosmic force may be connected to the fundamental principles that govern the emergence and development of consciousness itself. The ability to create beings like the Alabaster and Onyx Lords implies understanding of the deepest mechanisms through which awareness emerges from matter and energy. The meteorite sorceries that draw power directly from cosmic sources represent perhaps the most direct form of communion with the primeval current available to mortal practitioners. These spells bypass terrestrial magical systems entirely, drawing their power from astronomical sources that remain connected to the fundamental cosmic processes that generated them. Practitioners of such magic become conduits for forces that operate on scales far beyond ordinary human comprehension. The relationship between the primeval current and the concept of inheritance suggests that access to cosmic power may be governed by principles that transcend ordinary political or institutional authority. The ability to commune with fundamental cosmic forces appears to depend on factors that cannot be simply granted or withdrawn by temporal powers, creating possibilities for forms of magical authority that remain independent of established hierarchies. The crystalline transformation that characterizes advanced communion with the primeval current should be understood not as corruption or destruction, but as a form of evolutionary adaptation. The scholars who undergo such transformations may be developing new forms of consciousness, better suited to direct interaction with cosmic forces, trading their limited human awareness for expanded cosmic perception. The eternal nature of beings transformed by the primeval current suggests that this cosmic force offers a form of immortality quite different from the static preservation promised by other divine powers. This is not the frozen eternity of unchanging perfection, but rather the dynamic immortality of continuous transformation and growth, consciousness that persists through constant adaptation to cosmic forces. The relationship between the primeval current and the fundamental structure of reality raises profound questions about the nature of existence itself. If magical phenomena represent direct manipulation of cosmic forces that underlie all material processes, then the distinction between natural and supernatural becomes meaningless. Magic, from this perspective, is not a violation of natural law, but rather the application of deeper natural principles that ordinary consciousness cannot directly perceive or manipulate. The Academy's research into the primeval current represents one of the most ambitious intellectual projects in Elden Ring's narrative, the attempt to understand and harness the fundamental forces that govern magical reality itself. This research stands in stark contrast to the faith-based approaches favored by other cosmic powers, representing a commitment to knowledge and understanding that transcends the limitations of received wisdom or divine revelation. The dangers associated with primeval current research, the transformations, the loss of human consciousness, the risk of being overwhelmed by cosmic forces too vast for mortal comprehension, reflect the fundamental challenge of working with powers that operate on scales beyond ordinary awareness. The current represents both the ultimate promise and the ultimate peril of magical research, offering infinite power at the cost of everything that makes consciousness recognizably human. The relationship between the primeval current and other outer gods remains one of the great mysteries of Elden Ring's cosmology. Does this cosmic force represent a power that transcends and encompasses all other divine authorities? Or is it simply another player in the cosmic competition for influence over reality? The answer to this question may determine the ultimate fate of all other magical and divine systems in the universe. As we continue our exploration of the cosmic forces that shape Elden Ring's reality, the primeval current serves as a reminder that beneath all the dramatic conflicts and competing divine visions lies a more fundamental question about the nature of consciousness and its relationship to the cosmic forces from which it emerges. The current represents the possibility that consciousness itself may be the ultimate cosmic force, that awareness and understanding may be more fundamental than any particular divine authority or cosmic principle. The dragon, God, ancient sovereignty beyond time. In the misty reaches of crumbling Farum Azula, where time itself seems fractured and the boundaries between past and present dissolve into ambiguity, we encounter evidence of one of the most ancient and mysterious cosmic authorities in all of Elden Ring's cosmological history, the unnamed god that once served as the patron deity of Dragon Lord Plursidda Sax during his reign as Elden Lord in ages long past. This dragon god represents something fundamentally different from the other outer gods we have examined thus far. Where entities like the Greater Will, the Frenzied Flame, or the God of Rot can be understood through their effects on the present world and their interactions with current inhabitants of the lands between, the dragon god exists primarily as absence, as the echo of a cosmic authority that has departed so completely that even its name has been forgotten by history. The remembrance of the Dragon Lord tells us only that once his god was fled, the Lord continued to await its return, providing one of the most poignant images in all of Elden Ring's lore, the faithful servant maintaining eternal vigil for a master who may never return. Plursidda Sax's continued waiting in his place beyond time represents a form of loyalty that transcends even the abandonment by the object of that loyalty. The phrase, beyond time, that characterizes Plursidda Sax's dwelling place provides crucial insight into the nature of the dragon god's authority and the cosmic principles it represented. This is not merely a location removed from ordinary temporal flow, but rather a realm where time operates according to different principles entirely. The dragon god appears to have possessed power over temporal mechanics themselves, the ability to exist outside the normal constraints of causation and sequence that govern ordinary reality. The ancient dragon. Smithing Stone's description reveals additional information about the dragon god's relationship to temporal reality. The ancient Dragon Lord's seat is said to lie beyond time. This stone lightly twists time, allowing the creation of a weapon capable of slaying a god. This suggests that the dragon god's authority was intimately connected to the manipulation of temporal forces, that its power derived from mastery over the fundamental mechanisms that govern the flow of cause and effect. The implications of such temporal mastery are staggering to contemplate. A god capable of existing beyond time would possess the ability to perceive all moments simultaneously, to understand the complete pattern of cause and effect that connects past, present, and future. Such a being would not merely influence events, but would exist in a state of cosmic omniscience that transcends the limitations of sequential consciousness. The red lightning that serves as Plursidda Sax's signature attack may represent a residual fragment of the dragon god's power, cosmic energy that persists even after its divine source has departed. This lightning is described as being tinged with gold, suggesting a connection to the primordial golden energy that preceded the current cosmic order. The dragon god's authority may have been associated with forces that predate and underlie all subsequent forms of divine power. The ancient dragons that served under Placido Sax's rule possessed abilities that clearly derived from their god's cosmic authority. Their stone scales that twist time and make them effectively immortal represent biological adaptations that allowed them to participate in their god's temporal mastery. These creatures were not simply powerful beasts, but rather living embodiments of cosmic principles, beings whose very existence expressed the dragon god's understanding of temporal mechanics. The relationship between the dragon god and the concept of eternity reveals important insights into this entity's cosmic vision. Unlike other forms of immortality that might involve static preservation or cyclical renewal, the eternity associated with the ancient dragons appears to involve active participation in temporal transcendence. They do not simply live forever, but rather exist in a state that transcends the normal relationship between consciousness and time. The departure of the dragon god represents one of the most significant cosmic events in Elden Ring's deep history, an abandonment that left an entire civilization of immortal beings without divine guidance or cosmic purpose. The reasons for this departure remain completely mysterious. We know neither what caused the god to flee, nor where it might have gone, nor whether it might ever return. This divine abandonment creates unique dynamics in how the dragon god's influence persists in the world. Unlike other outer gods that continue to work actively through their servants and institutions, the dragon god's power exists primarily as memory and potential, as capabilities that persist in its former servants, despite the absence of active divine support. Placido Sax and the ancient dragons represent a form of cosmic orphanhood, beings with divine capabilities but no divine guidance. The temple complex of Fara Mazula itself serves as a monument to the dragon god's former presence and continued absence. These massive structures, with their impossible architecture and gravity-defying construction, represent achievements that could only have been accomplished with divine assistance. They stand as testimony to a form of cosmic authority that once reshaped reality according to principles we can no longer fully understand. The beastmen that served the ancient dragons and still inhabit Fara Mazula represent another category of beings shaped by the dragon god's influence. These creatures, with their combination of animal instinct and divine loyalty, embody principles of service and devotion that persist even after the object of their devotion has vanished. Their continued presence in the crumbling temple suggests that some forms of cosmic conditioning transcend the departure of their cosmic source. The relationship between the dragon god and the subsequent arrival of the Greater Will raises fascinating questions about cosmic succession and the relationship between different divine authorities. Did the Greater Will fill a vacuum left by the dragon god's departure? Or did its arrival somehow cause or contribute to the dragon god's decision to flee? The answer to this question could reveal important insights into how cosmic powers interact and compete with one another. The concept of divine flight itself is worth examining in detail. What does it mean for a god to flee? This suggests that even cosmic authorities are subject to forces or pressures that can drive them from their domains. The dragon god's departure may indicate that divine power, no matter how vast, remains vulnerable to cosmic predators or environmental changes that make continued presence impossible or inadvisable. The weighting that characterizes Placido Sax's current existence represents a form of faith that transcends ordinary religious devotion. This is not faith in a god's benevolence or justice, but faith in a god's eventual return, despite all evidence to the contrary. Placido Sax's vigil represents the ultimate expression of loyalty, continued service in the absence of any reward or even acknowledgement from the served. The place beyond time where Placido Sax maintains his vigil may represent an attempt to create conditions suitable for the dragon god's return. By removing himself from ordinary temporal flow, Plu Sida Sax may be maintaining a space where his god could re-enter reality without being constrained by the changes that have occurred during its absence. His waiting may be not merely passive, but actively preparatory. The possibility that the dragon god might eventually return adds an element of cosmic uncertainty to all other divine arrangements in the lands between. No matter how established other forms of cosmic authority might become, the potential return of a god with mastery over time itself represents a threat to all subsequent arrangements. The dragon god's return could retroactively alter the entire history of divine succession. The tragic dimension of Plu Sid Sax's story lies not just in his abandonment, but in the possibility that his waiting may be futile. Gods, even cosmic gods, may be subject to mortality or transformation that makes return impossible. Plu Sid Sax's vigil may represent not faithful preparation for reunion, but rather the inability to accept loss and move forward into new forms of existence. The relationship between the dragon god and the fundamental nature of time raises questions that extend beyond Elden Ring's fictional cosmology into real, philosophical territory. If consciousness is necessarily temporal, if awareness requires the experience of change and sequence, what does it mean for a god to exist beyond time? The dragon. God may represent a form of consciousness so alien to ordinary awareness that human concepts cannot adequately comprehend its nature. The legacy of the dragon god persists not just in the continued existence of ancient dragons and their servants, but in the very structure of reality itself. The temporal anomalies that characterize certain locations in the lands between, the ability of consciousness to perceive and manipulate time through various magical means, the possibility of existing in places beyond time, all of these phenomena may represent lasting effects of the dragon god's former presence. As we continue our exploration of the outer gods, the dragon god serves as a powerful reminder that cosmic authority is not necessarily permanent or stable. Even the most powerful divine entities may be subject to forces that can drive them from their domains or transform them beyond recognition. The universe of Elden Ring is not governed by eternal, unchanging cosmic principles, but rather by dynamic relationships between powers that remain vulnerable to loss, change, and abandonment. The gloam-eyed queen and the god of death's black flame. In the shadowed corners of Elden Ring's cosmological history, where official records give way to whispered legends and forbidden knowledge, we encounter one of the most controversial and enigmatic figures in the entire pantheon of divine powers, the entity known as the Gloam-eyed Queen and her mysterious connection to the cosmic force that manifests as the black flame of godslaying. The Gloam-eyed Queen represents a unique category within our exploration of outer gods and their influences. Unlike other cosmic entities that clearly exist as external forces working through mortal intermediaries, the Queen appears to occupy an ambiguous position between mortal Empyrean and cosmic principle. She may represent an instance where the boundary between human consciousness and cosmic authority became so thoroughly dissolved that the distinction between vessel and deity ceased to be meaningful. The black flame associated with the Gloam-eyed Queen embodies perhaps the most directly threatening power to divine authority that we encounter in Elden Ring's lore. This is not merely fire that burns mortal flesh, or even fire that transforms consciousness, but rather flame specifically described as capable of killing gods themselves. In a universe where divine authority represents the ultimate form of power and legitimacy, the existence of god-killing fire represents an existential threat to the entire cosmic order. The Godskin Apostles and Godskin Nobles, who serve the Gloam-eyed Queen, embody this god-killing principle in their very form and function. These beings do not merely worship a deity associated with death, but rather actively participate in the systematic hunting and slaying of divine entities. Their practice of fashioning clothing from the skin of slain gods represents not mere trophy-taking, but rather a form of spiritual communion with the principle of divine mortality. The ritual significance of wearing godskin reveals important insights into the theological implications of the Gloam-eyed Queen's cosmic vision. By literally clothing themselves in the remains of divine beings, the godskins demonstrate that gods are not transcendent, eternal principles, but rather material entities subject to death, decay, and utilitarian use. This practice represents perhaps the most radical rejection of divine authority possible: the transformation of gods into fashion accessories. The defeat of the Gloam-eyed Queen by Malekith, the Black Blade, represents one of the most significant cosmic battles in Elden Ring's deep history. This was not merely a political conflict between competing divine authorities, but rather a war between fundamentally different visions of what divine authority should mean. The Queen represented the principle that gods should be subject to death like any other beings, while Malekith served as the enforcer of the Greater Will's vision of controlled institutional death. The binding of destined death within Malekith's blade following this victory reveals the cosmic stakes involved in the conflict. By removing the natural death that affects all beings, including gods, from the normal operation of reality, the Greater Will fundamentally altered the structure of existence itself. Death became not a natural process, but an artificial tool that could be wielded according to divine will rather than cosmic law. The relationship between the Gloam-eyed Queen and the concept of destined death raises profound questions about the nature of divine authority and cosmic justice. If gods are truly deserving of their cosmic positions, why should they fear natural death? The very existence of God-killing flame suggests that divine authority may be maintained through artificial means rather than inherent worthiness or cosmic necessity. The black flame's specific properties, its ability to harm and kill divine beings while potentially leaving mortal entities unaffected, suggests that this cosmic force operates according to principles that invert normal hierarchies of power and vulnerability. Where ordinary flame might burn mortal flesh while leaving divine entities untouched, the black flame appears to target divinity itself, treating godhood as a form of cosmic corruption that must be burned away. The continued existence of godskin apostles and nobles, even after their queen's defeat, suggests that the cosmic principle she represented cannot be entirely eliminated through political or military victory. The god-killing flame persists in the world, waiting for opportunities to resume its work of divine destruction. This persistence indicates that the force the Gloam-eyed Queen embodied represents something more fundamental than individual ambition or political opposition. The ritual practices associated with the black flame reveal a sophisticated understanding of divine anatomy and spiritual mechanics. The godskin's ability to successfully hunt and kill gods implies detailed knowledge of divine vulnerabilities and weaknesses that other cosmic entities either do not possess or choose not to exploit. This knowledge suggests that the Gloam-eyed Queen may have achieved unprecedented insight into the true nature of divine authority. The theological implications of successful god hunting extend far beyond the immediate political consequences of removing specific divine entities from power. If gods can be hunted, killed, and skinned like any other prey animals, then the entire conceptual framework that supports divine authority becomes questionable. The Gloam-eyed Queen's success represents proof that divine power, no matter how vast, remains subject to superior force and cunning. The relationship between the Gloam-eyed Queen and the broader death-themed cosmic forces in Elden Ring's universe remains deliberately ambiguous. While her black flame is clearly associated with death and killing, its specific targeting of divine entities suggests a more focused and purposeful application than the broader death principles we see associated with entities like the twin bird or the ancient death birds. The Queen's status as an Empyrean, one of the rare individuals capable of serving as a vessel for cosmic power, raises questions about the relationship between her individual consciousness and the cosmic principle she embodied. Did she choose to become the avatar of god-killing fire, Or was she chosen by cosmic forces that required a mortal vessel to accomplish their purposes? The answer to this question could reveal important insights into how cosmic authorities recruit and utilize mortal agents. The connection between the Glomide Queen and the Prince of Death, Godwyn, suggests that death-related cosmic forces may work through multiple simultaneous manifestations rather than single, unified expressions. Both figures represent challenges to the greater will's control over death and mortality, but they approach this challenge from different directions and through different mechanisms. The aesthetic elements associated with the black flame, its dark coloration, its association with twilight and shadow, its connection to the concept of gloam, twilight, suggest that this cosmic force operates in liminal spaces, in the boundary regions between established cosmic authorities. The Queen may have represented a form of cosmic insurgency that worked through gaps and ambiguities in the established divine order. The persistence of black flame incantations and weapons even after the Queen's defeat indicates that cosmic principles, once manifested in reality, cannot be entirely eliminated through the removal of their original champions. The knowledge and power that the Glomide Queen brought into the world continues to circulate through hidden channels, waiting for new individuals capable of taking up her cosmic mission. The relationship between God-killing and the concept of cosmic renewal raises the possibility that the Glome-eyed Queen represented a necessary corrective force rather than simple destructive ambition. If divine authorities become corrupt, stagnant, or harmful to cosmic well-being, then the existence of forces capable of removing them may serve essential cosmic functions rather than mere criminal purposes. The fear that the black flame inspires in other divine entities reveals important insights into the psychology of cosmic authority. Gods that claim to represent eternal, unchanging principles should theoretically have nothing to fear from mortal challenges. The fact that they actively worked to suppress the Glomide Queen suggests awareness of their own vulnerability and mortality. The question of whether the Glomide Queen might somehow return or be succeeded by new champions of the Black Flame adds an element of ongoing cosmic tension to all divine arrangements in the lands between. As long as the god-killing flame exists in the world, no divine authority can consider itself entirely secure from challenge or replacement. As we continue our exploration of the outer gods, the Glomide Queen serves as a crucial reminder that cosmic authority, no matter how vast or apparently secure, remains subject to forces that can challenge and potentially destroy it. The existence of god-killing power suggests that the universe of Elden Ring operates according to principles that prevent any single cosmic authority from achieving absolute permanent dominance over reality. Lesser and mysterious outer gods. As our exploration of the major outer gods draws toward its conclusion, we must acknowledge that the cosmic landscape of Elden Ring contains numerous other divine entities and mysterious forces whose influence on the world remains more subtle or whose nature remains more obscure. These lesser-known cosmic powers remind us that the universe contains depths of mystery that may never be fully plumbed, forces that operate according to principles we have barely begun to understand. Among these more enigmatic entities, we encounter references to what may be a cosmic force associated with night and darkness that transcends the lunar deities we have already examined. The recent revelations about Elden Ring Night Rain suggest the existence of an outer god of night whose influence operates through entirely different mechanisms than the celestial wisdom associated with the moon deities. This entity appears to be characterized by bones with a distinct lifelessness, suggesting a form of death or ending that differs significantly from the natural death cycles associated with other cosmic forces. The power of this night god to alter fate connects it to the fundamental mechanisms that govern destiny and causation in the universe. Unlike other forms of fate manipulation that work through knowledge or cosmic positioning, this entity appears capable of directly intervening in the causal chains that determine how events unfold. Such power represents a form of cosmic authority that transcends even the sophisticated temporal manipulation we see associated with other divine entities. The primeval current itself may represent something closer to a fundamental cosmic principle than a traditional outer god, but its influence on reality is so pervasive and fundamental that it deserves recognition as a cosmic force of the highest order. The current appears to be the underlying substrate from which all magical phenomena derive their ultimate power, the cosmic river of energy that flows through and connects all aspects of supernatural reality. The relationship between the primeval current and consciousness itself raises profound questions about the nature of awareness and its role in cosmic evolution. If magical power represents the capacity of consciousness to directly manipulate cosmic forces, then the primeval current may be the medium through which mind and matter interact at the most fundamental level. Access to this current may represent not just magical power, but cosmic enlightenment, direct participation in the processes that generate and sustain reality itself. We must also consider the possibility of cosmic forces that operate so subtly or on such vast scales that their influence remains largely invisible to mortal perception. The entity associated with verdigris and corrosion, mentioned in connection with certain armor sets, may represent a cosmic principle of decay and transformation that works through gradual, almost imperceptible changes rather than dramatic interventions. The god that may be associated with the ancient serpent traditions represents another category of cosmic force whose influence predates and potentially transcends the current arrangement of divine authorities. Serpent symbolism throughout Elden Ring's lore suggests connections to wisdom, transformation, and the cyclical nature of existence that may derive from contact with cosmic principles that operate according to logic fundamentally different from the hierarchical authorities we have examined in detail. The possibility of cosmic forces associated with specific geographical regions or natural phenomena suggests that divine authority in Elden Ring's universe may be more distributed and specialized than our focus on major outer gods might suggest. The entity that may be connected to storm and tempest, the forces associated with deep ocean and primordial waters, the cosmic principles that govern the behavior of crystals and minerals. All of these represent potential areas of divine influence that operate according to their own logic and serve their own cosmic purposes. The relationship between these lesser cosmic forces and the major outer gods we have examined in detail reveals important insights into the structure of cosmic authority in Elden Ring's universe. Rather than a simple hierarchy with a few powerful entities controlling all cosmic functions, the universe appears to contain a complex ecosystem of divine forces that interact, compete, and collaborate in ways that create the overall pattern of cosmic evolution. Some of these lesser forces may represent aspects or emanations of the major outer gods, specialized functions or regional manifestations of broader cosmic principles. Others may be entirely independent entities pursuing their own cosmic agendas according to their own understanding of what reality should become. Still, others may represent emerging cosmic forces, new forms of divine authority that are developing in response to changing cosmic conditions. The fragmented and incomplete nature of our knowledge about these entities reflects broader themes about the limits of mortal understanding when confronted with cosmic forces that operate on scales and according to principles that transcend ordinary comprehension. The universe of Elden Ring contains mysteries that may be literally incomprehensible to minds shaped by terrestrial existence and temporal consciousness. Yet this incomprehensibility does not necessarily represent a limitation or failure of understanding. It may instead reflect the fundamental nature of cosmic reality, that the universe is so rich, so complex, so creatively abundant, that no single perspective, no matter how elevated or enlightened, can encompass its totality. The existence of cosmic forces that remain mysterious may be essential to maintaining the dynamic tension that drives cosmic evolution. The question of whether new outer gods can emerge, or whether existing cosmic forces can evolve into new forms, adds another dimension of uncertainty and possibility to the cosmic landscape. If consciousness and cosmic force are fundamentally connected, then the evolution of consciousness might naturally give rise to new forms of divine authority. The universe may be not just the battleground for existing cosmic forces, but the nursery for new forms of divine power. The role of mortal beings in cosmic evolution becomes particularly significant when viewed from this perspective. Rather than merely serving as pawns in conflicts between established cosmic authorities, conscious beings may participate in the creation of new cosmic forces through their choices, their understanding, and their willingness to transcend the limitations of their current existence. The tarnished, in choosing between different cosmic visions, may be participating in the birth of new cosmic realities. The incomplete and ambiguous nature of much cosmic knowledge in Elden Ring's universe may itself serve important cosmic functions. Mystery and uncertainty create space for growth, change, and creative evolution that might be impossible in a cosmos where all cosmic forces were clearly defined and rigidly structured. The gaps in our understanding may be not accidents, but essential features of a universe designed to support ongoing cosmic development. As we prepare to conclude our exploration of the outer gods, these lesser and more mysterious cosmic forces serve as reminders that the universe contains depths and possibilities that extend far beyond what we have been able to examine in detail. The cosmic landscape of Elden Ring is not a closed system with a finite number of divine entities, but rather an open field of possibility where new cosmic forces may emerge and existing authorities may evolve in directions we cannot yet imagine. Cosmic implications and philosophical themes. As we draw near the conclusion of our comprehensive exploration of the outer gods, it becomes essential to step back from the details of individual cosmic entities and examine the broader patterns and philosophical implications that emerge from their collective presence in Elden Ring's universe. These cosmic forces, in their diversity and conflict, present us with fundamental questions about the nature of reality, consciousness, authority, and meaning that extend far beyond the boundaries of fictional lore into genuine philosophical territory. The very existence of multiple outer gods competing for influence over reality suggests that the universe of Elden Ring operates according to pluralistic rather than monotheistic principles. No single cosmic force, no matter how powerful, possesses exclusive authority over all aspects of existence. This cosmic pluralism creates a universe characterized by tension, conflict, and ongoing change rather than stable hierarchy or eternal order. This pluralistic structure has profound implications for how individual consciousness relates to cosmic authority. Rather than existing in a universe where divine will is singular and unambiguous, conscious beings in Elden Ring's cosmos must navigate competing cosmic visions and choose between alternative understandings of what reality should become. This choice places enormous responsibility on individual consciousness, while simultaneously making genuine cosmic agency possible. The relationship between consciousness and cosmic force that emerges from our exploration suggests that awareness itself may be the fundamental cosmic principle from which all other divine authorities derive their power. The outer gods' need for mortal vessels, their dependence on conscious beings to enact their will in physical reality, their vulnerability to rebellion by their chosen champions, all of these factors point toward consciousness as the ultimate cosmic currency. This perspective transforms our understanding of the relationship between mortals and gods in Elden Ring's universe. Rather than representing a relationship between superior and inferior beings, the interaction between outer gods and conscious entities may represent a form of cosmic symbiosis, where divine power and mortal awareness each provide capabilities that the other lacks. The gods need consciousness to actualize their potential. Consciousness needs cosmic power to transcend its limitations. The theme of transformation that runs through the influence of all the outer gods suggests that change, rather than preservation, may be the fundamental cosmic principle. Every major cosmic force we have examined offers some form of transformation. The greater will's transformation through order, the frenzied flame's transformation through annihilation, the god of rot's transformation through decay and renewal. Even the most conservative cosmic forces work through change rather than simple preservation. This emphasis on transformation raises important questions about identity, continuity, and the value of existing forms of consciousness and reality. If all cosmic forces work through transformation, then the question becomes not whether change will occur, but rather what kind of change will be embraced and who will direct the process of transformation. The cosmic conflicts in Elden Ring represent competitions between different visions of what consciousness and reality should become. The tragic dimension that characterizes many of the relationships between outer gods and their mortal servants suggests that cosmic power may be inherently incompatible with ordinary human consciousness and values. Malenia's struggle against the rot within her, Mog's transformation through blood magic, Rykard's consumption by the god-devouring serpent, Messmer's imprisonment due to his serpentine nature. All of these stories suggest that cosmic communion comes at costs that may ultimately exceed its benefits. Yet this tragic dimension does not necessarily argue against cosmic engagement, but rather emphasizes the importance of approaching cosmic forces with appropriate wisdom and preparation. The characters who suffer most from their relationships with outer gods are often those who either did not choose their cosmic connections or who lacked adequate understanding of what such connections would require. The possibility of resistance to cosmic influence represented by figures like Miquella and his unalloyed gold suggests that consciousness may possess inherent capacities for maintaining independence from divine authority. This resistance represents not mere stubbornness or ignorance, but rather the assertion of consciousness's right to determine its own development and destiny, rather than accepting transformation imposed from external cosmic sources. The relationship between knowledge and cosmic power that emerges from our exploration reveals the crucial role that understanding plays in determining how cosmic influences affect individual consciousness. The scholars of the Academy, the sorcerers who study the primeval current, the characters who achieve different forms of cosmic communion, all demonstrate that knowledge and wisdom significantly influence how cosmic forces are experienced and integrated. This emphasis on knowledge and understanding suggests that the universe of Elden Ring rewards intellectual and spiritual development rather than simple submission to divine authority. The cosmic forces respect consciousness that can engage with them as equals, rather than merely serving as passive vessels for their influence. The cyclical nature of cosmic history that emerges from our examination of different ages and divine successions suggests that no cosmic arrangement, no matter how perfect or powerful, represents a final solution to the fundamental problems of existence. The age of the ancient dragons gave way to the Golden Order, which in turn faces challenges from multiple alternative cosmic visions. This cyclical pattern implies that cosmic evolution may be an ongoing process rather than a progression towards some ultimate, stable endpoint. The role of suffering and conflict in cosmic development represents one of the most challenging philosophical dimensions of Elden Ring's cosmological vision. Nearly every cosmic force we have examined works through or produces forms of suffering. The greater will's oppressive order, the frenzied flame's annihilating madness, the god of rot's transformative decay. This prevalence of suffering raises difficult questions about whether cosmic evolution necessarily requires pain, or whether alternative paths might be possible. Yet the suffering associated with cosmic forces in Elden Ring often serves transformative rather than purely destructive purposes. The pain experienced by characters like Malenia, Mog, or Messmer, while terrible, also grants them capabilities and insights that would be impossible to achieve through more comfortable paths. This suggests that suffering may be not an unfortunate side effect of cosmic engagement, but rather an essential mechanism through which consciousness expands beyond its original limitations. The theme of abandonment that appears in multiple cosmic narratives, the dragon god's departure, the greater will's withdrawal after the shattering, the sealing away of various outer gods, suggests that cosmic relationships are not permanent contracts, but rather dynamic interactions that can change or end based on evolving circumstances. This impermanence of cosmic relationships places additional responsibility on conscious beings to develop their own capacities rather than relying exclusively on divine support. The environmental and ecological dimensions of cosmic influence reveal how deeply these divine forces shape not just individual consciousness, but the entire structure of physical reality. The scarlet rot that transforms Caelid, the ghost flame that burns in ancient ruins, the golden light that emanates from the Erd Tree, all demonstrate that cosmic forces work through material reality rather than existing as purely spiritual phenomena. This material dimension of cosmic influence has important implications for how we understand the relationship between spiritual and physical reality in Elden Ring's universe. Rather than representing separate realms that occasionally interact, consciousness and matter appear to be aspects of a single cosmic continuum, where changes in one domain necessarily affect the other. Cosmic development involves the evolution of material reality as much as the transformation of consciousness. The question of cosmic purpose that emerges from our exploration remains deliberately ambiguous throughout Elden Ring's lore. While individual outer gods clearly possess their own agendas and visions, the universe as a whole does not appear to be moving toward any obvious predetermined goal. This absence of cosmic teleology creates space for conscious beings to participate in determining what purposes cosmic evolution should serve. The relationship between individual choice and cosmic destiny represents one of the most sophisticated philosophical elements in Elden Ring's cosmological vision. Characters are neither completely free to determine their own fates, nor completely constrained by cosmic forces beyond their control. Instead, they exist in a dynamic relationship where cosmic influences provide opportunities and constraints within which conscious choice operates to determine actual outcomes. This balance between determinism and freedom reflects sophisticated understanding of how consciousness might relate to cosmic forces in a universe where both individual agency and divine power are real and significant. The cosmic forces shape the range of possibilities available to consciousness, but consciousness determines which of those possibilities become actual through its choices and actions. The aesthetic dimensions of cosmic influence, the visual and sensory qualities associated with different outer gods, reveal how deeply these forces affect not just the content of experience, but its very quality and character. The golden light of the greater will creates a different universe of experience than the yellow flame of the frenzied flame, or the scarlet bloom of the god of rot. These aesthetic differences suggest that cosmic forces shape not just what happens, but how reality feels and appears to conscious beings. The tragic beauty that characterizes much of Elden Ring's cosmic imagery suggests that the universe operates according to aesthetic, as well as moral and practical principles. The cosmic forces create forms of beauty even when they cause suffering, generate meaning even when they destroy existing structures, produce awe even when they inspire terror. This aesthetic dimension implies that cosmic evolution may be guided in part by creative rather than purely utilitarian principles. The question of cosmic justice that runs through many of the narratives we have examined reveals deep ambiguity about whether the universe operates according to moral principles or merely according to power relationships. Some cosmic forces, like the formless mother's embrace of the outcast and wounded, appear to embody forms of cosmic justice. Others, like the greater will's systematic oppression of those it deems unworthy, seem to perpetuate cosmic injustice. This ambiguity about cosmic justice places enormous responsibility on conscious beings to create meaning and value through their own choices, rather than relying on cosmic forces to provide predetermined moral frameworks. The universe provides power and possibility, but consciousness must determine how that power should be used and what purposes it should serve. The relationship between cosmic knowledge and cosmic madness that appears throughout Elden Ring's lore suggests that understanding cosmic forces may require forms of consciousness that transcend ordinary human awareness. Characters who achieve deep cosmic knowledge, like the scholars transformed by the primeval current or the followers consumed by various forms of divine madness, often lose their capacity for ordinary human relationships and concerns. This theme raises important questions about the costs and benefits of cosmic understanding. Is the loss of ordinary humanity a necessary price for cosmic insight? Or does it represent a failure to find ways of integrating cosmic knowledge with human values and relationships? The answer to this question may determine whether cosmic evolution enhances or diminishes the aspects of existence that make consciousness valuable. The persistence of hope throughout Elden Ring's narratives, despite the often terrible costs of cosmic engagement, suggests that consciousness possesses inherent capacities for meaning creation that transcend any particular cosmic arrangement. Characters like Miquella continue working toward their visions of a better reality, even when faced with overwhelming cosmic opposition. This persistence implies that consciousness may be more fundamental than any particular cosmic force. The ending variations available to the Tarnished represent different visions of how consciousness might relate to cosmic authority in the future. Each ending embodies a different understanding of what relationship between individual awareness and cosmic force would best serve the ongoing development of consciousness and reality. These choices demonstrate that cosmic development remains open to conscious influence rather than being predetermined by existing cosmic authorities. The cosmic ecology of divine competition. As we approach the culmination of our exploration into the outer gods of Elden Ring, it becomes crucial to examine how these cosmic forces interact with each other in what might be described as a divine ecosystem of competing influences and overlapping domains. The Lands Between serves not merely as a stage for individual cosmic dramas, but as a complex environment where multiple divine authorities must coexist, compete, and occasionally collaborate in ways that shape the overall trajectory of cosmic evolution. The concept of cosmic ecology helps us understand why the Lands Between attracts so many different outer gods simultaneously. This realm appears to possess certain qualities, perhaps related to its connection to the Crucible, its role as a crossroads between different cosmic domains, or its unique capacity for generating and sustaining conscious beings, that make it particularly valuable real estate in the cosmic competition for influence over reality. The Greater Will's establishment of the Golden Order represents perhaps the most successful attempt to create a stable cosmic monopoly. But even this achievement required constant vigilance against competing cosmic influences. The systematic suppression of alternative divine authorities, the binding of destined death, the creation of institutional mechanisms for controlling access to cosmic power, all of these measures reveal how much effort was required to maintain even temporary cosmic dominance. The failure of this monopolistic approach becomes apparent when we examine how other cosmic forces found ways to work around or through the Golden Order's restrictions. The God of Rot manifested through millennia despite all attempts to prevent such cosmic intrusions. The frenzied flame gained influence through the very outcasts that the Golden Order created through its exclusionary practices. The Formless Mother found servants among those wounded by the Golden Order's rigid hierarchies. This pattern suggests that cosmic diversity may be a fundamental feature of reality rather than a temporary condition that could be eliminated through sufficient divine authority. The universe appears to resist cosmic monopolization, creating conditions that favor the emergence of alternative divine influences. Whenever any single cosmic force becomes too dominant or restrictive, the symbiotic relationships that develop between different cosmic forces reveal another important dimension of divine ecology. The lunar deities appear to have formed alliances with the Greater Will that allowed both cosmic authorities to coexist and mutually benefit from their relationship. The Academy of Raya Lucaria operated with relative independence from the Golden Order, while not directly challenging its fundamental authority. These symbiotic arrangements suggest that cosmic forces may be capable of recognizing mutual benefit and working together when their interests align. The universe need not be characterized by zero-sum competition between cosmic authorities, but could instead support forms of cosmic cooperation that enhance the overall development of consciousness and reality. The parasitic relationships that characterize other cosmic interactions reveal the darker possibilities of divine ecology. The god of Rot's relationship with Melania, Mog's transformation through the formless mother's influence, the abyssal serpent's corruption of Mesmer, all of these represent cases where cosmic forces benefit at the apparent expense of their mortal hosts. Yet even these seemingly exploitative relationships may serve broader cosmic purposes that justify their immediate costs. The question of cosmic predation emerges when we consider entities like the god-devouring serpent and the gloam-eyed queen, both of which appear to feed directly on other divine authorities. These cosmic predators serve important ecological functions by preventing any single divine authority from becoming too powerful or stagnant. They represent cosmic checks and balances that maintain dynamic tension within the divine ecosystem. The cyclical nature of cosmic dominance that emerges from Elden Ring's deep history suggests that divine ecology operates through long-term cycles where different cosmic forces rise and fall in influence over vast timescales. The age of the ancient dragons gave way to the Golden Order, which in turn faces challenges that may lead to new cosmic arrangements. These cycles may represent natural rhythms of cosmic evolution, rather than simple political succession. The role of geographical and environmental factors in cosmic ecology becomes apparent when we examine how different regions of the lands between favor different cosmic influences. Mistgelmir's volcanic environment supports serpentine cosmic forces. The underground areas harbor entities associated with death and decay. The celestial realm favors lunar and stellar influences. This geographical specialization suggests that cosmic forces may be adapted to specific environmental conditions. The seasonal and temporal aspects of cosmic influence reveal another dimension of divine ecology. Deathbirds appear only at night, suggesting that some cosmic forces operate according to temporal cycles that limit their direct influence to specific periods. The eclipse symbolism associated with various cosmic entities implies that certain divine influences may be strongest during rare astronomical alignments. The relationship between cosmic diversity and consciousness development emerges as one of the most important themes in understanding divine ecology. The competition between different cosmic forces creates opportunities for conscious beings to experience different forms of divine influence and choose between alternative paths of development. This cosmic diversity may be essential for the ongoing evolution of consciousness itself. The metabolic relationships between cosmic forces and mortal consciousness reveal how divine ecology depends on the energy and attention provided by conscious beings. Outer gods appear to require worship, faith, fear, or other forms of conscious engagement to maintain their influence in physical reality. This dependence creates a cosmic economy where attention and consciousness serve as fundamental currencies. The immune responses that develop when cosmic forces become too dominant or intrusive suggest that reality itself may possess mechanisms for maintaining cosmic balance. The emergence of resistance movements, the development of protective technologies like unalloyed gold, the spontaneous generation of opposing cosmic forces. All of these phenomena suggest that the universe actively works to prevent cosmic monopolization. The evolutionary pressures that shape cosmic forces over time reveal how divine ecology drives the development of increasingly sophisticated forms of cosmic authority. Outer gods that fail to adapt to changing conditions or that prove unable to compete effectively with other cosmic forces may decline in influence or disappear entirely. This cosmic natural selection may drive the evolution of divine consciousness, just as biological natural selection drives the evolution of material life forms. The niche specialization that characterizes different cosmic forces suggests that divine ecology supports a division of cosmic labor, where different outer gods focus on different aspects of reality. The greater will specializes in order and structure, the frenzied flame in chaos and dissolution, the god of rot in decay and renewal. This specialization may allow for more efficient cosmic development than would be possible under unified divine authority. The territorial aspects of cosmic influence reveal how divine ecology involves competition for cosmic space as well as cosmic function. Different regions of the lands between serve as strongholds for different cosmic forces, with boundaries that shift based on the relative strength and activity of competing divine authorities. These cosmic territories may overlap and interpenetrate in complex ways that create zones of mixed influence. The communication and coordination challenges that face cosmic forces operating in the same reality suggest that divine ecology may suffer from many of the same coordination problems that affect biological ecosystems. Misunderstandings between cosmic forces, conflicts over scarce resources like conscious attention, competition for the same ecological niches. All of these factors may contribute to cosmic instability and conflict. The restoration and succession dynamics that operate in cosmic ecology become apparent when we examine how new cosmic forces emerge to fill niches left vacant by the decline of previous divine authorities. The return of those who live in death following the binding of destined death. The emergence of new serpentine influences to replace suppressed ancient authorities. These phenomena suggest that cosmic ecology abhors vacuums and will generate new divine influences to replace those that have been eliminated. As we conclude our examination of cosmic ecology, it becomes clear that the outer gods of Elden Ring exist within a complex web of relationships that shape their individual development and their collective impact on reality. Understanding these ecological relationships is essential for comprehending how cosmic forces operate and how conscious beings might best navigate the challenges and opportunities created by divine competition. Conclusion: the endless dance of cosmic forces. And so concludes our deep dive into the mysterious realm of Elden Ring's outer gods. We've discovered how these enigmatic entities shape reality from beyond the veil of mortal comprehension, each offering their own vision of what existence should become. From the greater will's rigid order to the frenzied flame's chaotic dissolution, from the god of rot's transformative decay to the formless mother's bloody truths, we have witnessed the vast spectrum of cosmic authority that influences every soul in the lands between. These outer gods represent more than mere antagonists or sources of power. They embody fundamental questions about the nature of consciousness, authority, transformation, and meaning that extend far beyond the boundaries of any fictional universe. In their conflicts and collaborations, their triumphs and failures, their moments of cosmic beauty and cosmic horror, we see reflected the eternal tensions that exist whenever consciousness encounters forces greater than itself. The legacy of the outer gods continues to shape the lands between long after the events of Elden Ring's narrative conclude. Their influence flows like invisible rivers through the landscape of reality, creating opportunities for transformation, growth, suffering, and transcendence that will challenge and inspire conscious beings for ages to come. The cosmic dance they perform, sometimes graceful, sometimes violent, always magnificent in its scope and complexity, reminds us that existence itself is an ongoing creative act, whose ultimate meaning remains to be determined by those with the courage to engage with forces beyond their immediate comprehension. The mysteries we have explored together represent only the beginning of what might be discovered about these cosmic entities. Like the scholars of the Academy pursuing the primeval current, or the Kyrian royalty reading fate in the stars, we too can find endless fascination in contemplating the deeper patterns that govern reality's evolution. The outer gods invite us to expand our consciousness, to embrace transformation, and to participate actively in the ongoing creation of meaning rather than passively accepting whatever cosmic arrangements we happen to inherit. Next time on Lore 2 RPG, we'll explore the intricate web of relationships between Queen Merica and her divine lineage, uncovering how the personal dramas of gods and demigods reflect broader cosmic themes of power, responsibility, and the price of divine authority. Until then, keep exploring those epic tales, fellow adventurers, and remember that in the vast cosmos of Elden Ring, every choice matters, and every soul has the potential to shape the very foundations of reality itself. Thanks for joining us on this epic journey into the deepest mysteries of the lands between. If you enjoyed this exploration of cosmic horror and divine politics, please like this video and subscribe to Lore 2 RPG for more comprehensive deep dives into gaming's greatest stories. The cosmos is vast, the mysteries are endless, and there are always more epic tales waiting to be discovered.